This next story has been suppressed by mainstream media. Let's go to Andreas for more.
Everybody, tune in to Recent Tartarians.
Recent Tartarians. Recent Tartarians.
Hello. Welcome to the Xirtus. Tune in for another exciting episode of wonder, imagination, and discovery.
Recent Tartarians.
Метафория образует всеобщие закономерности, определяющие законы классической физики для нашего
Sometimes I
мира.
look at the moon and just think, your skin's beautiful.
Baby, when I met you, there was peace unknown.
Что касается энергии наномер, то она превышает ядерную в немыслимое число раз – 10 в 74 степени.
That's it. That's it. That's it. With your arms now. That's it. That's it.
Thank you for watching Xirtus. Keep listening. Remember, if you enjoyed the video, please follow and subscribe and share and support. It really helps. Coming up next, Xirtus.
By the way, that's gone. If you didn't record that, that's gone forever. It's gone.
Well, let me tell you how excited I am to be here with one of my favorite people in the world. Freaking awesome. Giant's here. How's it going, man? It's good to see you. It's been a while.
Yeah, good to see you. That's one of my favorite openings for sure. I love that.
By the way,
one.
that's
That one
gone.
cracks me up.
It's gone if you
Yeah.
didn't record it. It's gone. It's gone. Like, that's
When
how I
did you
feel about
record
it.
that part?
That's Jason Page from the guy who did the Pokemon theme song. And also
Ah.
so my first interview with him is like 4 or 5 years ago now. But we talked about
Yeah.
how we had a couple videos, and he came on to Sync Tank too. But I really like our first interview because it's so out of control. He's talking about genital mutilation of babies and how he wished he wasn't circumcised. And I was like, whoa, dude.
shit.
I thought we were going to talk about
Yeah.
Pokemon. I was stoked. I was like, this is great. But
Yeah.
yeah, he'd just come off like a 5 or 10 day water fast. I think it was like a 5-day water fast. So he was
Yeah.
like super high energy, and it was really inspiring because it made me want to do a lot of the same things, like making music and everything like that. And I'd
Yeah.
always that line he said it wasn't supposed to be part of the song. What happened was, as he was recording the thing, my computer crashed, so I couldn't hear the finishing of the thing, and he thought that the show was just broken. And that's how he's like, oh, by the way, that's gone. If you didn't record that, that's gone forever. It's like,
Yeah.
that is a metaphor for life, but luckily it was saved, you know.
Yeah, I thought that was you actually. Yeah, interesting. That's very true, right? All the things we don't record are at least gone as far as our records are. I'm sure God has a storage system for everything.
Well, it's a weird sand mandala thing, right? Because you can sweep away the arrangement of the sand, but those are solid, glassy stones, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it all records memory. That's kind of a little bit of information that I've been thinking about and studying is how this, if you want to call it a matrix or whatever, how this existence records the information and feeds it back and learns from it and makes things better as we go, right? Refines
Not unlike a
things.
Pokeball. Sorry, I'm just trying to make old world Micmac happy because he wanted to hear that now. But no, it's true. I feel like we're generating some sort of and this is the thing. What is life other than memory, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And a big part of what we're doing that's so interesting, I think the coolest thing about human civilization is the expression of memory and the nuanced capacity to overcome tabula rasa that that you can take a child and show them a movie. I mean, granted, they tell you not to. They're like, don't show kids movies about World War II. But I'm glad I was the giver, right? Like, don't you want to have
Yeah.
the giver caste system upbringing where as a child you have lifetimes of data put into you?
Yeah.
I mean,
They
we're
probably
getting there.
lived it during that time and are reborn now, so
Yeah.
they probably lived through it. Who knows, right?
Well,
Absolutely.
that's something I also wanted to say really quickly, because I know we have a lot of things to talk about. But since we last talked, something that I found really fascinating that I didn't know about before, and I've learned since our last conversation, was about reincarnation from the Jewish perspective. Because a lot of people don't know what it was like with the Jews and the Canaanites and all of their different belief structures. But we've always shared this idea of Tartaria and this world culture and this kind of pre-Diluvian, antediluvian uniformity to beliefs, particularly the Eastern beliefs, that some of these ideas in Hinduism and Vaishnavism and Sanatana Dharma, right? That some of these ideas are actually connected. And the things that people used to think were, even the things I used to think were the most different, turn out to be the same, one of them being reincarnation, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it was, the Egyptians, that's all they focused on, really. When you look at it, that is what they're doing. That's what their focus was. That was what moved
Maybe
them to
explain
everything they
that,
did.
because a lot of time when people talk to me about the Egyptians, it's this kind of almost too close to the satanic Christian ideal of, you go to the afterlife and you serve the Lord. Are you telling me that that's not really what that's not the fullness of the Egyptian mythology?
No, I mean, from what I've studied and what I can recognize is what they were doing is, all their main gods have to do with reincarnation. What they try to mummify, right? They
Right.
focused on the dead, what happens when you die, and any of their major characters, which you can say is their gods or whatever, they
Their
were,
pantheon, they all reincarnate.
yeah, they all come back and they go to this underworld or the Duat. And yeah, I've been studying a lot about that. I got some of that in my presentation that we can get into some of the details of, you know, what it was that they believed was the Duat and how that connects to Shambhala, right? There's commonalities in the way that they at least we say it in English now, the way we say those words, right?
Of course.
And they all have to do with the underground and the underworld and the Milky Way, right? Because you don't
Hmm.
see any of these things until you are what, if you look at all the ancient spiritual systems, what they believed was the underworld was when we were at nighttime and we were facing and we saw the stars. You don't see the stars during the day, you know, apart from our major star and then the moon and then maybe some brighter celestial objects you can see through the blueness of the sky. But
So it's like
other
a
than that,
blue veil that's hiding the sky from us.
exactly. So that was heaven is always during the day, and then the underworld was always during the night. And so
Oh, wow.
they were always tracking the night through astronomy, astrology, right? And that then astrology is just the tracking of astronomical bodies that you can only see during the night. And so that's where, you know, for years I've been trying to correct people on their understanding of astrology and trying to say
Totally.
that, oh yeah, these constellations that we see, those are the things that make you what your zodiac sign is. And that doesn't make any sense. And they think that they can track that. But when you really understand astronomy or astrology, you know that the night sky during winter is actually the summer sky, the summer
Right.
night, right? So it's you would never be able to track your constellation at all just to see, oh, I look up in the sky and I verify that we're in this constellation at this time. You don't. You see the opposite constellation always. So that's a bad argument in a whole to understanding that. So technically, if you're looking at it as if the sun is in the center, if you believe that, and the earth is rotating around, right? The earth is actually closer to the opposite constellation
Of
because
course.
it's when it's facing and looking through the sun's path to the other side, which is the further constellation, that it sees what it is that people think is our zodiac sign.
Playing by
So
their
that's
own game. Right.
yeah, so it's that's not we don't have influence from that constellation. They were just marking that as a
Yeah.
background drop to make a marker so that they can find patterns, but we've moved away from those constellations, but that's not what's important. What's important is your position to the sun and
Right.
the influence of the sun depending on how close we are and at what angle we are around the sun, that is really your zodiac. That's what makes your zodiac. So you're not going to follow constellations anymore. They're just old patterns. They're just
Yeah.
old stars that were sitting in the backdrop. We've moved away from that. So what makes you your personality, it makes you in your zodiac is your position in, if you're in a cardinal sign, basically, you want to go off cardinal sign, or the solstice and the equinox. You find those by seasons. The season is really the influence, because the season is
This makes the most
influenced
sense,
by
right?
the
That's
tropic. Yeah,
something
by the
that's
sun.
actually practically, I'm sorry, I hadn't thought about it before, but it makes the
Yeah.
most possible sense. The star the light that's shining in the grow room, that's growing your
Yes.
plants, right? The thing that's
Yes.
actually affecting you, radiating you, that is the thing. It's time wave theory, actually, at that point. That's
Yes.
brilliant.
And see, and this is the thing that, you know, understanding that and not getting confused by supposed Vedic or whatever misconceptions
Because they're
of what
using like they're like, what's going on right now? Like we'll
Yeah.
use that to mark where we're at. It's kind of like a map about this moment, but it's not
Yeah.
necessarily that that's the thing. That's just
Yeah.
what was going on while the thing was happening.
And they knew that we were drifting away from it, and they actually embedded secretly most of the secret stuff in the symbology and the secret societies and everything they left behind. They were embedding, actually telling us in the future, once we can actually look at this stuff and use things like computer programs and be more precise on how
When
to
the
find a certain point that they knew had to do with a big rebirth thing, because everything is about rebirth, everything is about
Right.
cycle. So there's this huge cycle that they knew was coming,
They're like,
and they were
winter's
trying.
coming, spring's
Yes,
coming after. Be ready.
exactly. So they were predicting something that was coming in the future, and they needed to embed it, and they didn't want it to be scrambled or messed with until that time period came. And I believe they really knew it, and so they figured out a way to encode it into things. And this is why they've used things like stone and stuff like that to impart it, and then stonemasons and secret societies and all this stuff, so that it can get down the line into a place where we're more sophisticated and we can decode it, because they don't want it to be broken apart until a certain period comes, and they believe a certain character and all this stuff will be rebirthed, and will be humanity has an opportunity at rebirth or destruction. I think that's the opposite end of it, is that it could be complete annihilation, because we've gone too far. Once you get too far, right, there's got to be a choice. There's not, I can let you live and hope for the best. We've had enough of those chances, I believe. And, we're in a period now where it's make it or break it. And there's a lot of factors we can go over tonight, kind of where I can prove
Yeah,
that, show
I
that.
don't know. We kind of gave it away, but there's a presentation, so it's going to be pretty awesome. But Giants brought
Yeah.
us a pretty awesome list of things that we can look over and see the synchronicities here. But that's a pretty good opening. If you want, we can just go for it and start if you like.
Yeah. So just to kind of, set it up ahead of time. This presentation is obviously multifaceted. It's got a lot of different cultural things that I'm trying to bring in, and I don't have a whole lot of time to focus on this. And so this is something that I wanted to bring up as something we can work towards as a community, a network, as humanity, because it obviously takes a community, it takes a world to really dive into this stuff. But I just want to bring up some of the factors that I can even get to just show some connecting points between all these different spiritual, cultural, ancient things.
Right.
And
And
what
the
I think that
questions
they're,
that come with that, right?
yeah, yeah, it's almost endless. And that's the problem is, when I have free time and I'm really busy trying to do other aspects of my life, I have a family and all that stuff.
Yeah, you're running
Try
a
to
business, yeah.
yeah, I try to put these things in, and I try to write myself notes like, oh, remember to do this, this, and this. So it's very, there's lots of gaps, lots of emptiness, lots of questions to be asked, but I will just present what I have so far, and we'll just
Totally.
kind of go through it and just talk about it. So
Well, as much as you try to downplay it, I think everybody knows it's going to be pretty based because,
I hope so.
and I'm
I mean,
excited. Yeah.
I hope it's not too much of a letdown. Let's see. So I just press present. Is that what
Yeah,
I
go for
do?
the present button at the bottom there.
Okay. And then it's gonna I
It
can get to
offers
my
you a window or a tab, and you can share.
okay. All right, let's see. I can share my screen, right? Share screen, blah blah blah.
Oh, and apparently, if you have a Google slideshow, there's actually a way to like import from Google Slides. I had no
Oh,
idea,
okay. Yeah,
but
I
I never knew
don't
that.
I think it's let's see. Yeah, it's just one of these guys. All right. Now it's saying choose what you want to share. So I just have to find, is it going to find it on my desktop?
It
Sorry, I'm
should
not
be.
really prepared for this,
Oh,
but
is the presentation open?
let me see.
Open the
I opened it up.
presentation. Yeah, as
I
long as
opened
it's
it up.
open, then it should be a window that it says, and when you click on present, it should be like share screen, and then go to window, which is the second tap, and then click on the window that is the app, the presentation app.
Okay, window. All right, there we go.
Yeah,
Share. All right.
based.
All right.
Sweet.
So
And I'll pull it up to full screen there.
can you see that now?
Yeah, epic. Do you want
Okay.
to? You could probably click present, and it could go full screen if you wanted to.
Okay. Yeah.
Control. I
I
think it's
mean,
Control F.
it's not really organized, but yeah, I think down here, what is this? If I go slideshow or something, right?
Yeah, it should work.
Okay.
Oh wait, but then it's gonna open up the. Okay, hold on. So unshare and then now share the slideshow. Is that how that works? I guess it doesn't matter. Just leave it leave it the
I
normal way.
I could say end show.
Yeah, and show.
Is that good?
Yeah, just we'll just see this right here.
All right. So this is kind of what I wanted to name it, is the Shatapatha Brahmana. I don't know if you ever heard of that, but it's the Brahmana of 100 paths. Brahmana means explanation of sacred knowledge or doctrine.
It's really
Shatapatha
funny
means
that you bring this up.
oh, did you
I was just spent all I you won't believe me. I spent all last night studying the Shatapatha.
what?
I just wrote a thing called the 100 Sutra. I'll talk to you about
Interesting.
it. I'll talk to you about it after. That's an incredible
Oh, that's
coincidence.
perfect. Yeah, that's meant to be, right? Yeah, so obviously, then it means that there's proceeding in 100 ways, and obviously the way languages and ancient languages, you can flip that around and kind of put it in different orders to, you know, come up with what it's trying to explain. But obviously, uh, the way I feel is that, you know, it takes 100 paths to kind of understand something that's in the center, 100 different viewpoints, right? To really get the full understanding of something. And it takes you down 100 different rabbit holes a lot of times when you're trying to look into something. But yeah, we could probably go on a whole discussion on, all the different ways you can take this phrase,
Right.
right?
There's some about the 99 and 1 also, 333s and like 3 passes, and yeah, there's a
Yeah.
completion. There's something it's interesting. I was literally just wondering like why is it 100 is such a useful number for something like
Yeah.
this, right? Because it's such a round number. How does it work so well?
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe the one is the thing in the center, and the 99 is the angles that you see it at to really
Mm.
fully encompass what it is, understand it in all of its different angles. You don't need all the in-between angles as long as you have those 99. Some people say if you're just looking at a flat circle, right, 33 degrees of that circle, looking at the thing in the center gives you a good, understanding of it. So maybe if you're, three-dimensionally, right, you have three different ways of doing those 33 degrees. You got
Right.
the 99 and that thing's in the center. Yeah. So, anyways, that's what I kind of wanted to name the presentation. So I'll
Based.
get to the first slide here. So this is kind of what we were discussing a little bit, where if you look here, can you see my cursor?
Yeah.
Okay. So right here in December, right? This is December on this side. See, you're in Cancer, right? And
Mhm.
then June, you're over here, you're in Capricorn. So when you're in winter solstice, you're actually closest to Cancer, which a
Oh
lot of
yeah.
people don't really understand. And when you're in summer, right, you're actually closer to Capricorn. You're closer to the opposite thing. It's just, you face that during the night, and they've made it so it's like during the day. So when you're looking across past the sun, you would see Cancer over here. That's why they would name it Cancer,
Oh
right?
wow. Okay, so the idea is yeah, because of course the sun is influencing you, right? Daylight.
Yes. Yeah, so this person, let's say whatever zodiac sign it is, right? They're sitting somewhere. Obviously we're not on a perfect circle, it's an elliptical or whatever. It gets closer to the
It's pear
sun.
shape. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. So we're closer to the sun. Just um like a lot of people have said this when you understand like grow lights and stuff like that. Like depending
Mm.
on the distance from the flame, also like when you light a lighter, you see different colors, right? Things burn at different rates at different heats, right? So at different distances, the color that comes off of that burning burns different materials, and so that color influences depending on what kind of bulb you're using during grow periods and stuff like that. You use a different bulb to mimic different seasons, right? So you're getting a different energy spectrum on the flame, how close you are to that flame or to that light or whatever, right? You can kind of trick it too. Like you can use the same bulb and just come closer, and you can kind of trick the plant to do different things also by just getting it closer to the flame in a way,
Mm.
right? So you know, I reason it out that depending on where the Earth is, what angle and how close it is to the sun is really how we're getting influence from that sun and getting differences in the outcome of what happens on Earth and how people's personalities are, etc.
Yeah, of course. That makes way more sense.
Yeah. So yeah, because these all these stars are at different distances. That's another thing, is not only are you not close to whatever constellation system that it is, you're further away from it at a certain point, right? So it must not be that constellation. Like, let's just say you argue then, oh, yeah, they were just tracking it wrong, and you're actually influenced by the Cancer constellation because you're closer to that one, but they were saying it was Capricorn constellation, blah, blah, blah. Well, the thing is those stars aren't all together, aren't clustered together at different distances from each other. And each one of these constellations are at all different types of distances, and they're not split evenly how the zodiac shows, right? They're not in those areas. Like Pisces really
Totally.
comes over the top of Aquarius and a Capricorn. So
And these are
it's just
moving mobiles, right? They're not even if
yeah.
you're in a spot for now, it doesn't mean it's going to be anywhere near that in the
Yeah, they're
future.
not clean cut pie, the
Yeah.
zodiac, right? It's not clear where those stars that are considered a part of that constellation
It's so
exactly
funny
are.
because
Yeah.
like a lot of the time, so I've used this as an argument like against astrology, but also for it to say, well, maybe we just bred ourselves to have a genetic disposition. You're like, oh, you're born at this time, so you're a Virgo, and so I will expect Virgo behavior from you, and you do that for 1,000 generations. Doesn't matter where the stars are now. You've genetically, epigenetically trained genes to be a certain way. But this is even more practical, which is that the actual environmental conditions that are happening on the earth during weather and season, that
Yeah.
those affect, duh, right?
Yes, and we know that certain crystals are uptaken into certain plant life that grows during certain seasons and stuff like that, and your mother is eating those.
Oh,
All mothers are eating
totally.
those. And
Yeah.
that's embedded into the child plus all the energies of that 9 months.
Yeah.
So it's
I mean,
more
you
of,
think
yeah,
about a
taking
plant again,
environmental.
right? You take a
Yes.
plant and you grow it in certain soil at certain times of year. You take
Yeah.
a plant like with hemp, you grow it with a grow light and you have a strobe light or something where it's changing the hours and days and it thinks that the apocalypse is coming. It becomes a hermaphrodite plant, right?
Yes. Yep. Exactly. Yes. We're very much influenced by the environment of our solar system. And it's not it the backdrop stars are not a part of our solar system, but they're a good way to mark things to understand aeons. And that's what I try to tell people is, look, they were mapping out longer distance things with that, and that's why they wanted to show the precession of the equinox and what it meant. But that was just for ages. That wasn't for you to change your personality type. They always knew, I believe, if you really look into astrology really deeply, they always knew that you were gonna have your tendencies and all that stuff that was it was locked into the seasons that you're born, right? And this is why they've had to change a lot of stuff with timing and everything with the Catholics and all this have done this because
Right.
they started slipping away from the season and then they had to backtrack and put it back into the seasons, right? So they
Hmm.
weren't doing it willy-nilly or trying to confuse us and stuff. They just weren't keeping track very well. And then there was many different time systems that were trying to track it. And
True.
so some of them moved it, some of them didn't. And so there's a lot of confusion there. But when you really start looking at why they moved it and ones that didn't move it and everything,
Well, during Napoleon's time, you had 10-day weeks, and winter became in summer. Like, of course, there's going to be. It makes
yeah.
perfect sense that it wasn't completely a conspiracy. Yeah, people
Yep.
are
Yeah.
idiots.
The groups that had really good astronomers and astrologers tried to keep the time more consistent and they were locking things in at very least secretly into certain time periods to show that certain things were going to happen or have happened or will continue to happen in those time periods. They knew that they were very important things to keep track of. But you'll see over and over again, for whatever reason, my belief is that these cultures were threatened by an outside force constantly, all of them, right? And these are like empire models, and the characters that are behind these empire models are very dominating. I would say they get their aggressiveness and their dominant behavior and stuff like that from a part of this existence, which is a duality, which is the things that we call evil and stuff like that. It is supposed to test us and ride us and pressure us and try to capture information, and our job is to not let that happen, right? So there has to be something that lights the fire under our asses. There has to be something that's constantly chasing. It gives purpose in a way, right? So it's a necessary component, but if allowed to, it just keeps going. It tries to just keep dominating. And so it was trying to snuff out information, culture, all kinds of stuff, and then consume them and bring them into their model, their empire
Wow,
model.
that's pretty much yeah. Well, exactly.
Yeah. And so that's why a lot of them had to go to encoding this stuff secretly and then hiding, doing things uh, underground or just, putting it into symbology, telling it in stories where it's not quite clear. But
Right.
the more that,
Assimilation's a dangerous thing. If you assimilate everything, eventually
yep,
everything is lost. Right.
yes,
That's
exactly. Yeah. And it's supposed to do that because we probably wouldn't progress at all, right? And I think that the progressive movement and all these characters in history that have always talked about, yeah, it's all about progress, right? They're very elitist, they're very money-driven characters and stuff like that. And I
true.
think they're always tied into the empire, and they've been given the power to do what they're doing and they like it and they become money hungry and they work with it with that dominance power. And so that's all about progress, progress, progress. It doesn't matter if you enslave people, it doesn't matter what you do to them because it's about the end result. Like we have to get somewhere, right? They're the ones pushing towards sophistication in a way. So in a way they're doing their job, they're helping us get closer to Sophia, to sophistication over time. But they have to have something that checks them. And goodness needs to check that. Goodness needs to go, well, yeah, you can just stomp us into the ground, though, if you just get let loose to do whatever you want. So there has to be a fighting back, but it's in an opposite way, right? It's with goodness, compassion, fairness, So there's always been that duality to life. And then I think that these, you know, astronomers and magi and stuff that were the good wizards, right, were embedding this stuff uh, into symbolic form, into story form, so they can pass it down. So, something that takes a lot of conversations to pick apart, like who was a part of what,
Well, I mean, I think
because
you can imagine in any circumstance where there's going to be, we said assimilation, but there's also integration. And integration can be, great, but it could also be like 1,000 guys getting murdered between 200,000 guys in a battlefield. Like integration can be sloppy. And so if a
yeah,
woman's brewing club is being shut down because they're gonna burned at the stake because they think they're witches or something like that,
yeah,
or your new religious, your the king's religious priests are going to replace your religious priests. I mean, there's just so many circumstances where your family have had these lessons for generations, and you're going to try so desperately to try to save them somehow, not necessarily to spread them, just to save them, right?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's they 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 consume what we discover. They're not very creative, obviously. What they are is they're dominant, right? And so things that uh, we discover, or we research for our own good, they like to take it and use it against us. They use our psychology against us, right? It's a
Mm,
very it's an energy that likes to just manipulate, dominate, and use, right?
mm.
And, you know, it's necessary, but, you know, I believe that we're coming to a point where it's either make it or break it. It's gonna break us, or we're gonna stand up and not allow that model to dominate anymore, because
Yeah.
I think we've
You heard my
progressed
whole
to the
thing with
point.
the crab people thing, right? Like crabs keep evolving. It seems like really related to this cancer empire
Yeah,
card
tell me about
idea.
it.
Well,
Yeah.
just that if you look at popular mechanics, it says that there are just thousands of crabs evolving simultaneously, independently all over the world. It's a natural thing that happens as things become crab-like. So it just reminds me of that kind of cancerous empire that everything loses itself to becoming this exoskeleton superorganism, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and then there's the bee cluster, which we know bees are kind of drone-like and everything, and that's in Cancer, right? That's
Yeah,
interesting. We're
yeah,
we're gonna definitely touch on that, because we're gonna go in, this presentation goes into what is this winter summer solstice thing, and what kind of symbology has been embedded about it, and what it's unlocking right now. And yeah, we're gonna go into aspects of that with Cancer, so we'll dive into that for sure. I just wanted to show down here at the bottom of this one that see how the sun is just a little bit closer to winter, right? So just for people that kind of don't have a framework in their mind of how it is, at least in this model. I know there's a lot of flat Earth people that are probably saying, well, that doesn't make sense on flat Earth, but
ironically, it makes just as much sense in either map if you
yeah,
don't
because
know.
yeah, exactly. Because it's just you put the Earth in the middle, and then the sun would spin around. The sun would just be out farther towards the other one, so it would
Yeah, it's
work
doing the
either
same thing.
way. Yeah, it's doing the same thing either way. The sun is going to be, if it's spinning around and we're on a flat, circular thing, the sun is obviously going to be, I guess it would be further away visually from us if we're in the north, but if we were down south, then it would be closer to us. So, I guess that could be explored then, if we can see if there was a difference between, um, let's say a Cancer zodiac person in the southern hemisphere than the northern hemisphere. So far, it seems
In
to
my
map the same.
experience, bro, Argentinian cancers are just like New York cancers.
Yeah, that's what I've found too. If you look at the famous ones, especially, you start studying them, there's the similarities are very interesting. Plus facial expressions, all kinds of stuff match up, right? And with older people that were famous in the past that matched up with that zodiac sign, they do these very similar expressions. Like Leos, you'll see them, they love to like open their eyes really wide when something's like, whoa. They'll always do this really big-eyed expression, like Arnold does it in a lot of his movies, right? There's tons of them, so it's something very in common. Like I show people a
Right.
lot. I'm like, look at this person.
Have you
You know
heard
what
of
I mean?
Johann Klepper?
No. Who's
Someone,
who?
I'm only gonna do it for a second because it's such a ridiculous ADHD segue. But someone sent me this recently, and I didn't do. I just want you to know I didn't do this. All right, I didn't make this. Okay, this is real. There's the real guy, Jochen Klepper, who is. I mean, he kind of looks like me. I don't know, to an extent. I feel like if I were a survivor of World War II and I was exhausted, I'd probably be looking like that to an extent. Didn't have access to like modern medicine or something like that.
Yeah, I can see it. I can see it for sure.
His birthday is like 10 days after mine. And yeah, I don't know, just kind of on that same wave. I thought that was interesting.
Absolutely. You'll start seeing these interesting. I've had buddies that I've been in construction for years, and you see all kinds of expressions. You're doing construction, you get people exhausted, you get them in the morning when they just had their cup of coffee. And I've always paid attention to astrology, zodiac stuff, so I ask people their birthdays and all that stuff, and so they give me the feedback. There's just something about they'll give me a certain look, and I'm just like, dude, that reminds me of my other buddy. And I asked them their birthday, and it's like, yeah, a couple days away from another person I know. And it's like,
I remember one time I was sitting at a party, and my friend Nick Johnson, and I'll just shout him out because it was such a brilliant story. I'm sitting there and I'm like looking around, and we're all kind of cool people, I think, and like we're all kind of weird. And he just says, "You have no idea what's happening, do you?" I'm like, what's happening? He's like, "You're all just having a grand old time. You don't even know." And I'm like, what does that even mean? And like Facebook had recently come out, and so before a party you could like know things about everybody that you didn't normally know. He's like, "You know what your birthday is?" And I'm like, "Yeah, February 18th." And he's like, "You know what my birthday is?" And I'm like, "No, it's like February 18th. But do you know what his birthday is?" Nick Bernstein. He's like, "No, February 18th." And then he points to like 3 people. It's like, all of us, just 10 people here, we all have the same birthday. I was like, what's going on? We all were just like freaking out, man. I don't know.
Yeah,
that was crazy.
That's a trip. Yeah, when you start getting around people that are, so there's got to be something. I would like to, dive into that even more. Like find out, like, okay, what were you guys celebrating? What was going on?
We were
pull you
like
together.
artists that were all like, we were just like artists, and a lot really kind of similarly interested in things. Like were very interested in metaphysics, Terence McKenna, Teilhard Chardin, integrated alchemy, all that kind of stuff. But there were like girls too, like artist girls, and we were just friends. Like it was all just people that were super individualistic and kind of similar to me in a sense, all with different interests and things like that, and from different parts of the world. Like a girl from Israel, people from Southern California, people from New York. And so, yeah, it was really, and a guy from Texas. It was really random. I think another guy from North Carolina. All of these people. And then there was probably like 30 or 40 people that existed in the whole party together that were in other places too. So I don't remember exactly like their birthdays or anything like that. But there were also people that were like, they're all like kind of similar people too. Like it felt like we all had friends that were like very receptive to what we were doing, and they were all doing their thing, and then we were just having like this huddle party, and it was really funny because we were subconscious. We had no idea why, right?
How many years ago was this?
Oh, like 2010 to 9, 10, something like that.
Yeah. The more you like kind of start getting more of the details of things like that.
Yeah, I should reach out to Nick, and we should do like a whole analysis of that. Maybe analysis of that.
I'm always interested in stuff like that. That's really cool, really interesting, because God's bringing you together, right? Even though
Abbott, what does that mean, Abbott? What does that mean? Like, explain to me. Abbott's saying, I'm just curious. Now I want to see my own commercials. I don't know. Maybe those are your commercials.
Looks like you.
Or you feel like
there's an Asian woman that looks like you. Is that what he's saying?
God, I hope so. That'd be pretty sweet.
You gotta put that on one of your intro videos.
I should, right?
Yeah. Oh, so I think I'm on the wrong. I keep on going out. Okay. So if I'm on this.
Actually, I was thinking like we could. You want to try something now that we took a second there? Let's so turn off the presentation for a second. We're gonna make this bigger for people. I have a plan.
And then how would I turn off the presentation? Do I do that?
So you click on the present button, just end presentation.
Press stop screen or something like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna make the screen bigger, everybody. I think I know what to do. So now, while
Okay.
the presentation, click on Start Slideshow.
Just on my presentation on my desktop
Yeah,
here?
yeah.
Okay, let's try that. Let's, all right.
Okay, and is it taking? Can you get to the StreamYard link still? Can you see that? If you press
What?
Alt Tab on your keyboard, you should be
Oh.
able to switch to the StreamYard link.
Oh, I got it. Let's see. Yes.
Cool. All right, so now click
Okay.
on Present. If you click on Present again, now look
Okay,
for the
share
look for
screen.
this look for the big window of the presentation and share that.
Okay.
I think it'll be worth it.
Yeah, sorry for my
No, and it's also like I think 6 people just learned how to do what I just said. Hopefully, I might be lying to myself, but hopefully you all learned something there, and that's the
Did
hope.
that work?
Yeah. So now I'm gonna pull
Okay.
that up. Boom. Okay. And now you can
All right.
press Alt Tab, go back to the presentation, and just use the presentation.
Alt tab. Okay. All right. All right. And
This
then
has been
I
computer
can
lessons
just,
with Xirtus.
can I move up and down? How do I change the slide?
You should be able to press an arrow or space or click on it or something. Let's see what happens when you try.
Let's see. Enter.
An arrow, nothing's changing it. And you're in the you're in the presentation, and it's not letting you move it.
Yeah.
Maybe press Escape.
Escape.
Press Alt Tab again and make sure that it's actually in the correct window, because it should pull up several options.
And I want to be in our window, or I want to be in
Oh wait, try go to the either the presentation window or the actual like workshop presentation window, like not the slideshow but the actual place you were at before, and try to change it there and see what happens.
Let's see. Yeah, this one I think I can change like that.
Oh.
Is it changing for you?
Boom, got it. There you go.
Okay. All right.
Sweet.
All right, let's
Epic.
see. So yeah, I mean on this one it's just same thing. I was just showing that we're across, right? Technically.
Tabernacle.
Yeah, this one just shows all the the planets, how they circle around the Earth, right? They have a different orbit a little bit, but they all technically go through. If you can see can you see my cursor still?
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, they're
So we're on the left side there at 9 o'clock, or what is that?
Yep, yeah, the left side over here. So this is basically Sagittarius, right? The Archer, and then over here you'll see Orion, you'll see the twins, there's Gemini, right? So there's not, this isn't the typical zodiac, but essentially the Milky Way rides over the top like this, but kind of at an angle, and we'll get into that in some other clips. I was just throwing these in there to just kind of give some sort of visuals to how everything's working.
I mean, it reminds me. You immediately made me think of the clock, though, right? Like just really quickly, like think about that, right? We're talking about the zodiac, and you can use that as a reference of time for the sun as well, which is crazy to think about.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that's why there's one hand on the clock is the sun hand, and one hand on the clock is the moon hand, because that's what the zodiac really is. That's why it's split into 12 pieces. It's 12 pieces of moon to sun relationship, right? So for every cycle of the moon, basically there's a slice of, that's why it's like a month. Every zodiac is like a month long. It's a moon period, right? So there's 12 of them before one sun cycle happens, or one earth cycle around the sun happens. You got 12 moon cycles. So there's a lot of details to why astrology is. People always have these things like, why shouldn't there be 13 zodiacs and all this stuff? And it's like, well,
Right.
because there's a reason, right? And the fact is that we lost that understanding. We don't know why it is that they did that specifically, right?
Bro, I
So there's
mean, we
tons
need
of
a new word for
constellations.
space time astrology because I'm 100,000% in. I don't know what to tell you. Like this is
Yeah,
it. This is it for me.
yeah, yeah. There's constellations everywhere. So you can look all around north, south. Some you can't see until you're down in the South Pole area or whatever, or Argentina or whatever. You can see different parts of the Milky Way and stuff that you can't see from our perspective in the north, right? I I try to kind of imagine why it would be on a flat plane that you can do that, but we can go into that in other presentations or in the future. What I'm trying to show here with this is giving a coordinate map with our galaxy of where we're at, which is right in this area, right? And then how the center of the galaxy is lined up with our Milky Way is what we're seeing a band around us of all these stars, right? All these arms of of the Milky Way, right? So I don't know if did you know that that's what we're seeing. We're just seeing all of these. This is a line of stars that are really clustered together, and so it looks milky when we look at it. And there's obviously
You're
like
telling me it's like some sort of a train of satellites, essentially natural satellites that
yeah, and it's on
kind
a
of.
flat plane, so when you look, north or south of it, in the perspective of, this kind of looking in this kind of thing, it's a flat plane that the galactic plane is on. That's why they call it the galactic plane. That if you're looking above the galactic plane or below the galactic plane, there is constellations and stuff, but it's much darker, right? But if you're looking within the galactic plane, it's all lit up because there's tons and tons of stars that are clustered in that area. And so we're really just seeing these different arms that are around us, right? We're sitting in here on a certain arm, but there's a bunch of them, splaying out and you know, in a circular pattern, but flat around us. And so what we've tracked, and astronomers, ancient astronomers, astrologers, magi have tracked, is that in this area between Scorpius and Sagittarius, right? And that's the Centaur arm here, and the Sagittarius arm is right here, which comes right in and it kind of splits. We're like sitting in between like two splits of it or whatever. Right in between there, where the constellation of Sagittarius and Scorpio are, right behind it is the galactic plane, right? And this is where Ophiuchus is sitting, right? But he's a little bit higher in the ecliptic. The ecliptic is where all of our planets cycle around, is the ecliptic area. So in that area, Ophiuchus is sitting a little bit higher, but he has like a leg that comes down. And this is all just the reasons they embedded these symbolic visuals of Ophiuchus and the story of Ophiuchus and all this stuff is because they're telling you something, right? When you get into the stories of, oh, well, what is Ophiuchus and blah 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 and all this stuff, and you start comparing it to what all the ancient astrologers were embedding into their spiritual systems and stuff like that, you'll start seeing this similar story behind what it is, and you'll understand that hey, it's all just symbolic. It's all trying to tell you something. It's not telling it to you specifically directly. It's giving you insight on what it was that they want to be decoded later, right? So Ophiuchus's leg is is sitting right here, and it's entering into the galactic plane in between Sagittarius and Scorpius. And I want to make sure that it's understood. This is Sagittarius and Scorpius, the constellations, not anymore the zodiac. The zodiac has moved away from there. What a person would be as a Sagittarius or a Scorpio, zodiac, there, that personality, that part of the season or whatever has moved away, but the constellations that they were originally as a backdrop are always going to be here. They're always going to be aligned with the galactic center, right? So I got a closer picture. See, I draw the line there to show you like this is where it goes, right? And on the other side, you have Orion and Taurus and everything that is near this end of what we see as the Milky Way, which is this arm, right? So, but it's at an angle because we're actually on a tilt. Our sun, everything, our solar system's at a tilt. It's not flat with the Milky Way, right? It's tilted, I think 27 degrees or something like that. I don't remember exactly. So when we see it, it's actually going over the top of our solar system and coming back down and basically headed through Taurus, Orion area, and a little bit of it kind of goes maybe into almost into Cancer. But visually, you gotta, I know it's a lot. That's why I'm leaving it up for a while, is like you gotta kind of, take it in and really think about how this would look visually. Unfortunately, I wish we had better programs and stuff like that where we can really zoom in and do 360s and show how this all works. But I've been trying to compile pictures and stuff like that to give a little view. But over here, you can see the, you know, distance from the galactic center at least, and then that it's all flat, right? And then we have obviously, stars and other galaxies and all this stuff that we can see off in the darker plane areas. But this is basically it's pretty thin, right? And that's why we see it as this like
space sperm. You can say it, panspermia.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, but we're at a tilt, and so it kind of goes over us like a rainbow almost, right? And so it's connected to the Wizard of Oz and all that. We can go into why they were symbolically embedding it into the Wizard of Oz and that golden path and all that stuff. But it's connected to a lot of things. So I just want to keep continuing on. This is just a closer picture of it. So you see,
and you start to notice the names get pretty mystical and mythological as you get more there. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. So I from what I recognize is all of our major media companies, the individuals that were behind even developing Hollywood, developing our music industry, all that stuff. They work with these top artists, and I think artists.
Oh, you mean like Orion Pictures or Taurus Productions or Cassiopeia Films or what? Really?
Yeah. They're obviously very educated in this in the symbology, the astronomy, the constellations, all the different characters that they associate with it, and all those stories and everything, and they're embedding it into their stories. They don't give it to everybody.
Which they often show at the Centaurus Cineplex. Sorry, I'll stop.
No, yeah, that's there's a lot of dynamics when
they're so into it. It's crazy. Like the stars, of course, like movies and the stars, but like why? And what's the deal? Why are they so obsessed with? Have you ever been to these old movie sets and these old movie like the movie theaters used to be these temples where you had these statues of goddesses bare-breasted during puritanical Protestant valued times, right? These gold statues on the columns as you go past goddesses, and then they would project through silver on light. Like, I mean, it's clearly a mystical thing to them, right? And and there's a reason they're naming them after the stars, like you're showing.
Yes. Yep. And there's a silver and a golden gate that's associated. So the golden gate is here, and the silver gate is over here, right?
Where's the golden gate? Sorry, I had to pull the screen.
The golden gate is right here in between Sagittarius and Scorpio.
Oh wow, where it is yellower even on the picture, kind of.
Yes, and the silver gate is got the silvery tones, which is on the outside of that whole spectrum, that light spectrum, as it's exiting out of our galaxy. That's the silver gate. So, that's the whole reason the Golden Gate Bridge is called the Golden Gate Bridge is all based on this. This goes back to Egyptian knowledge and in Israel they had a golden gate and a silver gate also on both sides of the of Jerusalem, right? So Jesus was supposed to ride through the Golden Gate on his donkey and all that stuff.
Right.
And the Golden Gate Bridge is called the Golden Gate Bridge because the strait, it was called the Golden Gate Strait. And the reason they called it the Golden Gate Strait, which is the waterway before they built the bridge, was because they knew that if you line that Golden Gate Strait, once we moved into the galactic plane, and you can see the Milky Way lined up with it, they believed that something was going to happen at that time, right? And so um, they finished the Golden Gate Bridge on January 5th, 1933. They did it on purpose. And then before they allowed the public to go out there and walk across the bridge, they did a ceremony with the Shriners, the Masons, and the Rosicrucians, which they made the Rosicrucian headquarters for the world in San Jose. And I know you already know this. We've spoken about this before. But yeah, they did their own little ritual and everything. And then they made a mock Jesus walk across and pass through the temptations of Christ. And then the final temptation, I think, was, women. And
And what do they make every kid in America, or in California at least, go to at the Rosicrucian Center in San Jose? The planetarium. The
yeah,
planetarium, where they project above you in the sky,
yeah,
in this room, and it's a flat room. It's a flat room with a firmament sort of projection above you, and you look up, and then they show you projected mobiles of the stars and tell you all about, right, the connections to these mythological stories and figures, and why
exactly.
these are stars that people are not talking about from satellites. These are stars that people are observing, that tribes are observing when they're looking for Sirius in Papua New Guinea, right?
Yeah,
Thousands of years ago. Or in Quechua tribes in Machu Picchu, or in Egypt, like we're talking about. But these are the things that we all saw and were obsessed with, because you had to imagine, like, that's the only thing you could do. You're going to look up there and you're going to see that. You're going to wonder
yeah.
about it.
Yep, very entertaining for one, but they started noticing patterns, right? That's the thing is it was like, okay, and that's where so above, so below, is that they were noticing that when things changed above, it was in association, things changed below, right? And then so they decided, at least some of our human ancestors decided, well, this is worth tracking because if we can avoid things and make better decisions based on knowing that certain things were going to happen and take advantage of them or whatever, that's very beneficial, right? So humanity had thousands of years. We don't know exactly how long, obviously that's arguable, but definitely thousands of years to really get a lot of data, right? It's like one of the oldest pieces of scientific information that we have is tracking the stars and seeing what happens on Earth and how different humans act depending on their, association with the time they were born and stuff like that. Even though that came later, it was more of trying to understand larger patterns because obviously the first pattern they notice is that we keep going into a time where it gets colder and darker, and then we go back into a time where it gets more, hotter and sunnier. And, depending on where you're near the equator, there seems to be more storms during these periods of time, so on and so on. So they got a lot of benefits out of tracking these stars. And, it's all speculation on how far they went and what else they were trying to
I
get
imagine if you're
into.
like able to calculate the weather and predict floods and save your family,
Yeah,
you might get a little religious about that. That might become a
exactly.
thing. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, and then arguably you really look at what the Egyptians were their main focus and all that, and really all these older and more dynamic cultures and their spiritual systems is they were all focused on death and rebirth and seem to think that you can go into this underworld and come back, or at least that, you know, gods or the main god, right? They saw that obviously the sun rises, gets to its, penultimate situation, then starts going down, and then kind of dies, goes under and disappears, and then comes back out, right? So,
Every day
um,
it's a new birth. It's
yeah,
new
so
baby.
so it's
Right.
constantly this repeated thing of death and rebirth. So, when you have nothing else to focus on, you're going to see that repeated it throughout nature all the time. So that, obviously it's going to be a huge factor in what they think this world is, right? They're going to gather like, okay, this world, what are we doing here? We wake up, we're in a fucking place and we don't know anything about it. Like, how do we figure out what the fuck this thing is, right?
The goddess does her
So,
ping pong ball trick, and then it rises, it falls, it lives, it dies.
yeah. So you're gonna watch nature and say, okay, well, yeah, it looks like everything keeps doing this. Maybe that's what we need to focus on. We need to figure out, why is it cycling like this? Why is there keep on being death and birth? And I mean, can we figure something else out about it? Is there a way out? Is there a way to make it better? Is there a way to fix it? Is there answers to this, right? Like, obviously this world is a test of some sort. We're being challenged by it, and
I'll say.
we're we're progressing, but we're going through ebbs and flows of progression and destruction. Obviously, we see a lot of that in history where things were wiped out, we don't have any memory of it or whatever, right? But ultimately, we're not done yet, and we're not gone. We haven't been completely wiped out. So, and we're getting more fine-tuned with the things that we're building, right? We're getting more intricate and, more miniature with it, which I think is a necessary component to um, being able to go what we consider down, which would be micro, and then up. We're doing both. We're working on things that can go up and explore more, and also go in and explore more and understand what that in is, or that under, or whatever. We're trying to pierce the veil, or trying to get to the other side of things, right? On both angles. But a lot of the focus seems to be the underworld. And then, the heavenly world, the above world, is something um, I personally believe that we're not supposed to get to until we go under first. So we have to learn how to go under and come back up. Get in, people say, "Oh yeah, you got to go within first," and all that stuff, right? Because it wouldn't make sense to just go back to where the source is if you haven't figured out what it is that you're doing, and you haven't made attempts to go deeper and do stuff. Like, it wants to go deeper, obviously, if it made us in to go downwards and deeper. Like, we're fallen in a way of thinking, right? We've gone south of the situation, and then there's, from our understandings, it seems like there's stuff more south of our situation, right? So we can go down further. So I believe we're supposed to figure things out, explore deeper, and then eventually we can
That tells us
bring,
more about outer.
yes, exactly. And eventually we can bring what it is that the source is to us. So all the things, so in the Hindu culture and all that, they all believe, if you really look at it, like the good word of the gospel, which is the good word, is Jesus was saying that heaven is supposed to come to earth, right? As it is in heaven will be done on earth. That's what is supposed to happen. Like, it's the ideal. Heaven is ethereal. It's not a physical place, right? You can call outer space or whatever the heavens, but you're really, the only time they were saying that in the ancient times was during the day. Like I was saying, they were saying the heavens are up above, but during the day, towards the sun, right? And then the underworld was during the night. So we can go through how you do your birth chart and all kinds of stuff. So Cancer is actually in the underworld. It's at the fourth house, right? It governs the fourth house, which is the underworld, which is the womb in the underworld. So it'd be like down here. I don't know. Can you still see my screen?
Yeah, I'm gonna pull it in solo. Hold on. Here you go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so down here, this would be like the fourth house. If we're looking at it as a circle, this is the zodiac here. This is where you'd have Cancer, And then up here at high noon is where you would have Capricorn. And Capricorn is basically an aspect of the father, right? It's the stern judgment aspect of the father. And then the Cancer is the female or the mother or the grandmother. And we'll get into that too on proving that out and everything also. But this would be the underworld, and then this would be the heavens. This would be the above world. It would be up here, and this is the plane between it, right? And basically the twilight zone would be across here.
Right where
But
the Pleiades cross.
yeah, and this is just this is looking at the galaxy, and I'm just using it because it kind of fits that. But technically,
Right.
it would just you would take a picture of like daytime and nighttime. Cancer would be down in the nighttime. It would be the underworld because it has to do with birth and the womb and the mother and all that stuff. And so the opposing thing is Cancer. I mean Capricorn across from it, right? So it's actually represents high noon is represented by the the seventh house, which is or it's the 10th house. Sorry, it's completely across from it. I'm just thinking something I'm going to get into the presentation, but it's the 10th house, which is high noon or the father. And so, anyways, let's move on. Here's some
I mean, it's just
pictures.
also just commenting. It's crazy how there everywhere I've been in the world, there are temples made of stones bigger than I could ever imagine lifting. You know, like everywhere in the world, and they're all to really specific stars like this or
Yes.
constellations like this. I find that
Yep.
fascinating.
Yes. And I argue like some people have it correct and some people have it incorrect, and they're really trying to guess. And there's a lot of stars that are very similarly shaped because stars are just dots and you can connect them in different ways. And so there's a lot of different cultures that connected them differently and add different stars in and take some out and everything. So that can get really convoluted trying to get into like, oh, we found this area, it's super old temple, it has all these constellations, and we try to associate it with ones that we have now. Some of them match up, some of them map because they are very specific. It's kind of hard not to see that kind of pattern. And then some of them are too close to each other, so it could be a bunch of different ones. So I see what I think is mistakes in the way that they're interpreting what constellations that the ancients were inscribing on their stones or whatever. But, that's a whole nother conversation and specifics into each one of those individual cases, you know. So, but here, so you see Ophiuchus, right? It's got its leg down here, and this is the galactic center is right here. So you see Scorpio and Sagittarius, it's sitting like right in between Scorpio and Sagittarius, and then the Milky Way goes up this way. But you see how the zodiac, here's Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces. So that's our ecliptic. And the Milky Way goes like this, like kind of like a rainbow over the top during the night, right? And it pretty much encircles us. So you see different parts of it uh, better when you're in the southern hemisphere than you do when you're in the north, right? So different areas of the galactic plane are more visible at different, uh, you know, longitudes, right? So anyways, this is just showing you that, you know, Sagittarius and Scorpio is where this alignment is and always will be, but that's again the constellations and not the zodiac. So that alignment's always there. Ophiuchus has always got its foot right in there, like pointing towards it. And so, um, yeah, the symbology
And so,
behind
just to
Ophiuchus.
remind people, Ophiuchus is what a lot of you were talking earlier about how this stuff is all in like a holographic solar projection of the universe being a 12 system. And so 13 would kind of, everyone's like, why 13? You kind of brought that up. 13 is Ophiuchus, right? That's what they argue. People try to say that Ophiuchus is supposed to be the 13th, and you're showing what it's doing to the other 12 and why.
Yeah, yeah. So also what's happening is as we're
God, that's like one of those bumper stickers. Like my other car's a Volkswagen, like my Zodiac is Ophiuchus. Space, bro.
Yeah, so I don't believe that it's another zodiac at all. So I believe
But
it
here's
doesn't
why.
really. Yeah, you don't need to name any. You can name all these zodiacs, which are just aligned with the season. So it's fixed on cardinal, right? So Capricorn just happens to be the winter solstice, right?
Yeah.
And that's a cardinal sign. So it just starts this wheel, right? So they always lock. The ancients that were really understood this stuff, they would say you always just when the solstice moves, you just
Mm-hmm.
lock that into the beginning of Capricorn. And you can call it whatever you want. It just they happen to associate it
Fair.
and call it Capricorn. It's been
Yeah.
embedded over time,
But
but you
and
can
like
call
we've
it
said,
whatever you want.
we like to be contrarians. I mean, the number 13 is really interesting because of the Mayan calendar. 13, but 0 and 12 is the thing with
Yeah,
13. So if 0 and 12, 13 is that crossover from the beginning to the end. So I get the vibe, but
yeah,
I see what you're saying here. Also, what Ophiuchus is doing, it's
yeah.
showing why Ophiuchus is associated. What do you think is the
The
reason
reason, yeah, I
what's it
think the
doing?
reason that it's in our zeitgeist and everything that's associated with 13 is because there is a a missing part of the moon cycle that is extra. And so there's a hidden nakshatra, and the nakshatras are lunar mansions in the Hindu belief
Right.
system, right? And Vedic belief system. And so they track it also with the backdrop of the stars and they associate it with certain stars. But I also would argue the same thing that these nakshatras are not supposed to be locked to those stars and they move along with the zodiac, and that they're basically about two and a half of these nakshatras in every sign. And then there's a hidden nakshatra, and this nakshatra is associated with Brahma. It actually goes way off the ecliptic, it goes way up to the North Pole. And when this nakshatra eventually uh, retrograde or moves into where Ophiuchus is at, which is also the nakshatra that was naturally there where Ophiuchus is at, where his foot points to and stuff like that, is called Mula. And Mula is the root of the tree of life, basically. And we can I might have it in the slide, but if not, we can go in and read about all these nakshatras. It's very
Yeah.
interesting.
I think it's
I
I would like, just because we're we don't have to now, we're gonna go into it at some point maybe in the future, but we could
yeah,
say there's like 27, 28 of them, right, is kind of the deal. And so
yeah,
there's more than 24, but just a bit more. And this also is because there are cycles that are outside of solar cycles, because the lunar calendar and the solar calendar align. So you could say the 12 cycle is certainly the solar calendar, right? It's definitely, you've shown ample evidence already so far that's proven
yeah,
that everything is associated so far with the sun in these calendars. But in
yeah,
terms of cycles that we're using for multiple solar disks, like the Vedas talk about multiple disks and the moon being equivalent to the sun in that respect, then there's also
yeah,
solar cycles. So you have also, and then that also plays into the idea of like, if there's cycles that align with each other, then there's kind of a leap cycle, right? And so in a leap cycle, you might consider these are the rare moments for a 13, or kind of like a day out of time, which is what the
yes.
Mayans talk about.
Yeah, it opens up a period of time, and so the Egyptians talk about this too. This was the time that Thoth gambled to get
Sorry.
Nut Nut to be able to give birth, and she was able to a 5 day period to give birth to the five gods, right? So that's where Horus and Set and
Right.
you know, sorry, I'm gonna brain fart right now, but the
But also
five major,
the Mayan calendar has the 5 days out of time pretty commonly to connect the human gestation calendar with the solar calendar, because the gestation calendar is based on the lunar calendar. So it's
yeah,
like a 260-day thing, which isn't enough for the proper year if you're trying to do. But like at the end of the day, or the end of
yeah.
the year, they just have a moment out of time, which I'm calling it a day out of time, but it's like 5 or 6 days sometimes, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
similarly,
So what it was in the story is that there was 360, a perfect circle, right? 'Cause it's 360. Where did the extra five come from? They uh they had everything worked out and perfected, but wanted to have children, and so this gave an opportunity to fit an extra 5 days in there. That's where all the gods came from. It was from Thoth.
Osiris, Isis, Set, Horus. There's a goddess there.
Yeah, maybe, and yeah, maybe Kepra. I don't know. Yeah, I don't remember because it depends on
Nephthys.
Yeah, yeah. There you go. So yeah, those gods were given this time period, opens up an extra gate, right? If you think about it, of time period where these gods are able to come from, and they came from the galactic center, right? So really you're actually at that galactic center when you're in Cancer, right? And this is again is the mother, which is the underworld, right? And this is why the duat was the Milky Way, which is the underworld. And this opened up a time period when these characters could come out of the underworld, and it was because of Thoth. Because remember, Thoth figured out how to travel into the Duat and come back again. He was this rebirth character. He figured it out. He'd gone to the underworld and figured out how to get back again. So he is able to help, and he's like a trickster god, all this different stuff. So he's able to help with this process of being able to bring extra characters in when the cycle itself isn't working, to create a change in aeons, right? It takes at least an aeon to pass before he's allowed to do it, or something like that, or him and the characters that he's working with to bring these characters out of that. And the god Kepra is the scarab beetle, right, which has to do with rebirth and all that stuff, is associated with Cancer and the underworld. And then the moon, right, and the moon and the sun sit right next to each other at the top or the bottom of the zodiac, however you want to think of it. And it's like a male and a female aspect. The moon is the feminine aspect. So all the moon cycles and everything have to do with this female. And then there's this extra nakshatra, extra moon piece, that's when, this birthing can happen, right? And so they're pointing it out. They're really just pointing this out, that there's a time period when this can happen. And this is when these hero characters can go into the underworld and try to help, in the stories, either a goddess or, or it's the female going in and helping out a god get out of the underworld, right?
With the Egyptians, it is Nephthys, because she's like the goddess of mourning, right? And she's the one that can reveal to those who cannot like see. She's the one who can show what is hidden by moonlight, right? That's kind of even like the point of her name, is hidden by like knowledge, or that which is hidden by moonlight, right?
Yep. And Isis, right, puts together her lost husband's body and stuff, because Set tears it up and throws it in, you know what I mean, into the water. So the Milky Way is also considered a river. It's also considered like the Nile, right? And everything. So all these stories of like the body being thrown, all the pieces into the Nile, and then this crocodile helps them and everything. So we can get into like who that crocodile character is and how it helps and everything, and its association with Thoth, Horus. Like the crocodile he's the only other character that has representations of himself mixed with Horus and stuff like that, right?
Right.
But that, that gets into a whole nother show and story on its own. But
we'll have to get hard on Sobek, at some point.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, it's all interconnected and everything. But so let me just try to move on here. Okay, so on this side, I am showing. See how there's Gemini here. This is a bad picture. I gotta get a better picture for it. But this is
Bethelgeist. I also like to say now Bethelgeist. I think that's really what they're talking about.
Yep, and so that's Orion, right? And Orion's arm is going into the Milky Way. So on one side, Ophiuchus, his leg's going into it, and on the other side, Orion's arm is going into it. So this is important symbology. They're doing this on purpose.
If Orion is Bethelgeist, then that is the house of El's spirit, right?
Yeah.
So there's something kind of interesting about Bethelgeist. I've said it 3 times at least.
Yes. Yeah. And Cancer is associated with, or Elizabeth, right, which is the Beth part, right? It means the promise of God, and it's associated with the rainbow, and that was what the promise was. That's why God gave us the rainbow or whatever, was the promise that he won't destroy us in a flood again, right?
Next
So
time,
that,
it'll be fire, right?
yeah. So El, the house of God, is promising. I think that's what Elizabeth means, like the promise of the house of God or whatever. So that's connected, and this is that, I would argue, that rainbow that we're talking about, right? So let me see. All right, so I
Man,
go
the
in a little
first
bit
time I heard
more.
about a micro flash flood, and my dad, I was like 10 or 8 or something, and they were like, "Oh yeah, it's horrible. This whole town got wiped out. Like a lot of people dead." I'm like, "What? I thought God said there couldn't be another flood." Like, nope, God said not a worldwide flood. I'm like, "Oh, that's right."
Yeah,
Such a lawyer. Gosh.
yeah, yeah. It won't be a destruction that is huge with water, because obviously there are going to be more humans. It wasn't even a complete destruction, because obviously we lived on past
And
it
it's
in the
just
first
far more
place.
efficient to use fire. I mean,
Yeah,
it's just easier.
yeah,
Purifying.
exactly. So here I just showing, here's Ophiuchus, right? Winter solstice. See how the winter solstice lines up with it now? See how it says December 21st? This is actually sitting in between.
Wow.
Here's Scorpio and Sagittarius. So now winter solstice, or what we would call Capricorn, the zodiac or whatever, Jesus's birth time or whatever, is now um, headed into this galactic plane, because you can see it right here. They show it, right? And it's actually closer in this. This is a little bit of a
God, that's
dated
really
picture.
funny in Back to the Future with like, oh, we can go to Jesus Christ's birth, and then December 25th, 0000. Yeah,
Yeah.
probably
And
maybe an
then,
inversion, but you know.
yeah. And so it's pretty much it would be touching the sun during this time period. I mean, whatever, this is just a representation. And then you see right here, up here, June 21st, right? Orion is touching the sun. And that we know that that's where the galactic plane goes through. So right now we just clicked into place the galactic plane and our solstices, which is what I argue, if you really look at all the data, that this is what they were talking about the whole time. This is what a lot of guys are uncovering, um, of a warning of something, a destruction that happened in the past, and they had it on their monuments or whatever, that there's a time period, and it's this time period. It's when this happens. It's when the winter solstices, certain zodiac signs click into place with the galactic plane, that they were interested in, at very least. Like, I'm not going to say what exactly it means, because that's something to uncover, but um,
A little
it's interesting.
synchronicity to note.
Yeah. Okay. So again, I'm just showing Ophiuchus, and I believe this is the ecliptic line right here. So that his leg is even going through the ecliptic, right? Kind of dives down in the ecliptic. So when you triangulate that the season, winter solstice, the ecliptic, and what the background is, which is the Milky Way, all cross, that's an important time period. And then I show here that the constellation of Capricorn is way over here. So that just, reiterating the same thing I keep saying, like, the constellation is not the zodiac, it's not the solstice. You know what I mean? It just moved on. So, just one of those things I have continued argument. And then I just show that, look, here's the shape of it. That's Capricorn, right? And you see the same shape. So it's easy to recognize. And then I go into Sagittarius, show that, what
I'm
it
starting
looks
to see
like.
a time wave loop here. Yeah, it's like it's a sound wave, or
Yeah,
it's a wave. It's a wave. You know,
it's a wave. Yeah. So what we see, right, is we see it cross over like this, but this is our ecliptic right here,
and
where
it's
all of a
all
sudden,
one electron. We're talking about the singular R Sol Invictus, the sun.
Yes. Yeah. You're talking about a hydrogen being just one thing, and it's everywhere
Yeah,
at
and
once.
it's kind of an interesting thought just looking at this map also because of the idea of it being a singular wave that's following a pattern and it's
Yeah.
pulling in these identities. We could call them identities or some or luminaries, right?
Yep. Yep. And then this is actually technically, I mean, it's just,
Oh, a
you know,
ladder wave. Oh, Mytho class. I love you. All right, you someone Mytho class. Send me your address. You get a T-shirt. That's good. All right, I'm happy.
so
You
this is
can DM me on
actually
Instagram or Discord.
actually collapsing into, so we're changing as we the top spins and we wobble like this. We're actually slowly not just moving backwards, but we're clicking like backwards. And so the Milky Way is actually coming closer and closer to being even with our ecliptic. Eventually it will, I don't know how many, you know, aeons when that will happen, but it's just another representation that shows that life tries to find balance eventually. It stops being these extreme waves and ups and downs, but we're on a different timeline specifically, I feel. So we're not waiting for that ecliptic and galactic plane to match up. That will be future generations of humanity way down the line that need to sort out more things and balance out more things. But we're on a different one that we need to sort out and balance things here in our, experience. All right, so I think I've kind of gone through a lot of this, but these are just a bunch of different images to show, kind of where the line is between all these, how they all cross. Okay. So the galactic center, per the Vedic tradition, is known as the Vishnu Nabi, the navel of Vishnu, and is considered to be the source of all light, spiritual wisdom, and power. So, just to tell a little bit of the story of Vishnu, is that he's sleeping, he's resting on this multi-headed, seven-headed uh, Naga, water Naga, and he's dreaming us up, and out of his belly comes this um, lotus, and the lotus when it opens up, Brahma comes awake, and he is uh, the you know creator, but through Vishnu, right? So Vishnu created him, and he becomes the creator. He doesn't. It's in complete darkness. He's just sitting on this lotus in complete darkness, and he has to figure out what it is that he's in, right? Like, I don't know where I'm at, what this is, nothing, no information. I got to make something. I got to make friends and, things to do and all kinds of stuff. Like, what do I do? What do I do? It takes a very long periods of time to figure out that if he meditates, he can kind of tap back into his spiritual self or whatever, his Vishnu self. And so he starts getting information back from Vishnu. And so, anyways, this is just associate that, a way of thinking about it is the center of the galaxy and all that. That's Vishnu laying there, and that's his belly button, and we're coming out from that, right? And we'll get into why it is that I think that's interesting and tied it into this. So some of this, I mean, I put this together a long time ago, so some of it I'm trying to like, okay, why did I put this in there? It is estimated that the celestial longitude of the galactic center is at 6 degrees 20 minutes of sidereal Sagittarius. Um, yeah, we kind of went over
Also, the
that already.
frame about the Naga, because like just I think for the reference of people, like a Naga is kind of like a sea serpent kind of thing, right? So,
Yeah,
um, you showed a picture of the cosmos, and you have kind of this serpent-like zone there.
yeah, yeah. So the serpents are always the Naga were put into the underworld, right? They lost a battle, and so they were put into the under. So they're the dragon. So there's all these stories across all the cultures where the dragons are in control of the treasure, the gold and all the gems and all that stuff. Because where do you find that? Underground, right? They were put into the underworld, and they have this celestial paradise in their own realm, that's under ours in this underworld, where it's all just about pleasure and all this stuff. It actually is a tantalizing place. It's not bad or anything like that. But you know, as we get more to the Western belief system and everything, it becomes more and more of a tale of terror and all that stuff, because they don't want you to go and you know, look into the other cultures and what they believe about these Nagas. You know,
Yeah, I don't want you hanging out with
Vishnu,
serpents.
yeah, and Vishnu is obviously in the underground or in the underworld, right? Because that's what the night sky and all that is, and you know,
The Netherlands.
that's him
Yeah.
laying out there and everything, and he's in the dream world. So dream world, underworld, the world of the dead, all that stuff is all associated when you really look at all these cultures. Like they didn't make it really a whole lot different. There's layers and stuff like that, but they were all basically associated. They were all, uh, you know, connected with each other. So
Right.
yeah, kind of just trying to get across that information. And the Naga, so that specific Naga, he's the king of Nagas, is Vishnu's helper. He's letting him sit on him. Vishnu, in one of the stories, conquers them and everything like that. And he basically bows down and becomes a follower of Vishnu. The nakshatra that's associated with that Naga is in Cancer, and it's Ashlesha, and it's called the clinging star. And the story is that when Vishnu decides this is too much or whatever, and he wants to stop dreaming, opens his eyes, everything disappears. The only thing that stays there is that clinging star, so Vishnu can come back and dream again, and then existence comes back again, right? So if all gets too crazy, it starts becoming a nightmare for Vishnu, then he's going to wake up and he's going to get out, and that means that's the end of us, right? Because we're just his dream. But that clinging star is still there, Ashlesha, which is in Cancer, and this will go into why this is important, that Cancer is the keystone with the Masons and all this stuff. They're specifically talking about this arch, about this rainbow, about this period of time. They're all talking about once it clicks in, the final test, you know, starts. And we have to pass it or we fail. And I believe Vishnu is going to wake up if we fail. And it's the end of existence. It just gets wiped out, you know, and the only thing left will be this clinging one, this clinging star, this Naga. This Naga, this character is story goes into has 7 daughters, and it's the Pleiades, and it's Atlas. It's the same thing. It's holding up the world too, this Naga. So we're on the back of it pretty much. But
I find it also interesting because we brought up Bethelgeist, you know, a couple times there, and there's that,
yeah,
you know, the Beetlejuice reference is just too strong because, of course, there's in Beetlejuice the snake,
yeah,
right? And it's the black and white, like the stars at night kind of a
exactly.
thing.
Yep, and so Beetlejuice is also associated with Atlas. And so my argument is, so just like on the other side, that the nakshatra and the zodiac clicked into the other side, the zodiac and that nakshatra and Ashlesha are clicking into the constellations of the meaning behind it. So now it's aligning. So that's why they did it on purpose. They were like, okay, in this mythology and this constellations, we're going to put this character, and then when the character in the nakshatra goes and clicks with it, that means that the gate's opening. And then it's the final gate, and I think that's the Lion's Gate. So once if we don't fix things by the time Cancer moves out of and through the Milky Way, and Leo comes and clicks in, then you have the father's response, right? Because it's more of a fatherly energy, and it's not good, and it looks like it's the end, you know, because the nakshatra sits right on the Lion's Gate, right where Leo naturally starts afterwards. So it's like a warning embedded into these stories and in these constellations and everything, that if you don't fix this, Vishnu's waking up. You know, you don't want to go through the gate of a lion, right? Like it's warning you, like you're gonna get eaten. That's what ends up happening, right? But we'll get into more details. So this is just showing how the procession is, you know, looked at if you're looking at where the North Pole is. And we're going to get into more details. Like I said, it's been a while since I looked at this presentation and why it is that I put things in the order that they are. And I don't know if I sorted all the order out and all that, but we'll just go through these pictures and kind of get a little bit of a idea of what they were tracking with the North Pole. And that, I don't know, a lot of people don't know that the North Pole hasn't always been the same star, right? So it's actually the pole, the whole North Pole is this whole area, and it's about the same size as the sun and the moon visually, right? You can fit it in there, the sun and the moon. So it goes around in a circle and at different times in history. If you believe our history, I know a lot of people say, oh, that's not true. Our history isn't like that. And we're living on flat Earth and all that's lies they made up. Well, either way, something's happening. There's a story embedded. I don't really want to, argue
These
with people on
mobiles or
stuff.
something. Yeah, exactly. It's more about this. Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyways, at 3000 BC, Thuban was considered the North Star. 1400 AD, right? The Vega will be the North Pole, and we're right here at Polaris, right? And this is Draco, right? So this dragon is really right in the center and has to do with most of what they would, all of our ancients were concentrating on. And yeah, we'll get into more details about that, how it's related to the swastika and all that, and the Bon, worshiping the North Pole. And, I believe they were embedding, they understood more details about tracking this because this was just as easy as tracking our ecliptic going into the Milky Way. And like I said, the hidden nakshatra points up to this at the time pointed to, I believe it was Vega, or I might be wrong. It's been a little while, but either way, it goes to what the North Pole was at the time. That is where Brahma is. So Brahma is the North Pole character, and he's related to Santa Claus, and this is why the North Pole is related to winter solstice and the Santa Claus character and all this stuff because it's a Reaper character. And really all the gods and everything that manifest and everything, they are Reaper characters, and we're coming to a time period that's going to be a Reaper period. We're in it now. There's an unveiling that's happening, and a lot of people think that it's you know, whatever um, culture that you're from or whatever religion you believe in, it's either revelations or one of their characters is going to come back during this period of time, and it's always a Reaper character when you really look at it. Um, so this is showing where Polaris is now, the North Star that we look at now, and then as we move, the top moves, right? It's a different pole star, but it's all in. Obviously, this is like stretched, so it's not like it's really this far away, but and obviously the polar stars are much more of a distance away where the Earth would look a lot smaller, but it's just showing you, um, how over time it goes in a circle, right, with the precession of the equinox. So this is where, it says which one it is. Draco is in the middle, and then it's giving you another, time dates of where it would have been at. So there's been times where there was no star that was close to it, but it's the polar region. So this whole thing is the North Pole, or, the polar stars or whatever, all anything in this area, pretty much. And I know a lot of people don't believe that. They think it's always been the same and it always will be, but that's another
I
argument.
mean, like, yeah, things move. It is what it is. Things
Yeah.
change.
Yeah, and I think they were tracking
even your
that.
fancy Rolex is gonna, things change.
Yeah, exactly. You got to wind it every once in a while, right? I don't know enough about Rolex, but yeah.
Basically, that's the deal. Is that it's not a really great watch. It's a
Yeah.
cool piece of jewelry if it's got a lot of gears in it. But if you want a good watch, you should just get a Timex. But
Yeah.
a Rolex has got like a bazillion microscopic gears designed by a horologist, right? Which is
Yeah.
that seems kind of Egyptian even in the title itself, right? But
Yeah.
yeah, it's a fancy piece of gears. Hey, look, Mythoclast. All right, well, that's pretty based. All right,
Yeah.
come on, everybody, come on, round of applause. Round of applause for Mythoclast. All right, everybody, get yourself some deleted scenes in the members only.
Yeah,
Nice.
I can only see my presentation in this view, so did the comment
Sorry,
come
no.
up? I can't see.
Mythoclast gave 5 memberships to the audience,
Oh,
which is
that's
very,
awesome.
very based.
He's the one that gives a lot of memberships, right?
I mean, I suppose people who are doing that, like Mythoclast, should be recognized. Thank you.
Yeah,
But there's
for
been
sure.
several
Thank
people.
you.
Also, I know Travis does it too, and
Yeah,
and Brittany's been doing it. So like anybody who's helping each other out, I actually like that a lot. That's a great way that everybody wins.
Now I have to do it, so I feel good about myself.
You don't have to do nothing.
I don't want to be left out, dude. I got to help some people out.
All right, dude.
Okay.
Yeah, FOMO is hard. It's a hard thing.
So the precession of the Earth's axis has a number of observable effects. First, the position of the south and north celestial pole appear to move in circles against the space's fixed backdrop of stars, completing one circuit in approximately 26,000 years. So that's where you get the aeon, right? 26,000 years as it completes a circuit and it comes back to itself. But the reason that it's not exactly 26,000 is because you're going backwards, right? So when you're coming towards it, you're going to get a difference of about 200 years. Yeah, how do I explain it? It's one of those things where you kind of, I mean, do you understand that?
So basically, like we have this idea of days, and we talk about leap years, but there's also like full cycles, and we talk about. That's one of the reasons I love the Mayan calendar, because the Mayan calendar isn't just about 1 year cycle or 19-year lunar cycle, or even just the 200-year cycles, right? Which are very important to this, because we'll notice that there are flood patterns that seem to be constant with 200-year cycles, but there's also this, like you were about to show, multi-thousand-year cycle, which is also broken into. We have a 12 and a 24, so there's a double of that. So I think that's going to be kind of the interesting thing about the micro and the macroscopic, is that we have Egyptians, and I don't know nearly as much as that as you do, but the Mayans clearly have a very similar calendar that are talking, and that's something I've always been fascinated with, is that long-term synchronicity. And so the 200-year cycles, like we were just saying, I mean, everywhere we go, we'll see not just environmental shifts, but probably related to that, war, rising civilization, famine, falling apart ghost towns of cathedral zones. I mean, it's incredible to see how quickly a civilization rises up, is super incredible, and falls apart again. I mean, the Roman Empire we think of as thousands of years, which is kind of funny, because really it's like a few centuries of multi-generational wealth that are then accumulated, exploiting people, and spent, right? And then things look at Portugal is a great example. Like Portugal in 200 years is freaking fascinating, right? It's like this nothing, it's this everything, it's this nothing. It's like, it's really, you can follow it pretty clearly.
Yeah, and so, I think it's obvious, and it's something that people need to take into consideration, is that everything cycles through something that was similar to the zodiac, where there's a beginning and then there's an end, but during the end period, there's always a testing and a separation for wheat from the chaff, right? Or the wheat from the weeds. You have to separate. You have to have your harvest and all this stuff. So that's something that's gonna be, so above, so below. It's gonna be in every single thing that happens.
And it might not be as strong for everybody, but you can think about it also like a clock again, where in school, all of a sudden that clock hitting that 12 is it's a huge deal all of a sudden, because it's a shift in your energy and where you are and what you're doing and your focus in such an extreme way. And so in certain circumstances, let's imagine that as the closest most people will ever get to being a Sumerian priest. But that's kind of the idea, is that they're shifting with what's happening. A 200-year hour, a divine 200-year hour is a very important part of this cycle that we're talking about.
Yep, and every single thing is going to go through different period of cycle depending on the energy of what it is, right? And so every culture and every empire will eventually have its period where it has to go through a reaping. It has to reap what it sows. It needs to get judged, right? So that's an important thing. I think that's avoided, ignored, and stuff like that is this reaper character and this reaping time because it's, it's scary. No one wants to be judged. Uh, people like being judged fairly if they're good. They like to get the presents from Santa Claus, but they don't like to get the coal, or maybe even worse depending on some of the Santa stories, right? That he had this little character with him, Black Pete, right? Or the little goblin character. I can't think of it right now, but those stories are very specific to a character that's associated with winter for a reason. That's associated with the North Pole for a reason. There's a deeper symbology than the argument of whether he's good or he's bad. He's actually both, right? And the same thing, there's an argument with Jesus. Like, was Jesus really the devil, or did he really exist or not? So you'll see this over and over again, that the characters that are associated with this, they are somewhat godly, somewhat not. Half the population thinks they didn't exist at all. Some of them think that he was
Archetypical.
evil, right? Or the other part think he was just the best in the world. So it's a very dualistic character that you're dealing with. And when you get down into the winter months, you're getting into in classic, astrology, astronomy associated with the planets that are associated with it. You're getting into Jupiter, Saturn, Jupiter. And Jupiter is known as benefic, and Saturn is known as, Saturn's known as malefic. And so being malefic or benefic isn't always good or bad, either one, right? You can't be overly benefic to evil, right? You can't be overly benefic with anything, because too much of anything is not good, right? And then you need something that's going to be malefic and be able to do the duty of executing something or taking something out that's evil, right? Getting rid of it, because it would, if not, then it would hurt the whole system. It would hurt the good. It would hurt the innocent. And so you want to be able to protect the innocent. So there's always a way of looking at either one of them as good and bad in different situations. So, but you need this Reaper character that is dualistic and its characteristics and stuff like that, and it does both. It'll do good for the good and bad for the bad, right? It gives you reap what you sow. You're going to get what you put out. You're going to get what you deserve.
Kind of like Brittany is getting what she put out of putting 5 memberships and blah, blah, blah. I just had to do it too. All right, thanks.
Yeah.
Also, Brittany's given 5 memberships, so thank you very much, Brittany, who's done this before and is doing it right now. Anybody else who isn't a member, are you doing it? Are you jumping on? I don't know if you know how to do this, because I feel bad for the people that missed out. Click on the button there and then steal a membership, or you get it for free. It's really what it is. And you can go watch like deleted scenes and members only content, which is pretty based. Awesome. Yeah. Thank you.
That is awesome. Thank you, Brittany. Yeah. So yeah, you reap what you sow. We notice that, the good things that we put out in this world, they come back to us. They come back to us in the way that God intends it, the goddess, Mother Nature, whatever. We're supposed to be looking. The more we look out for each other, and the more we work together and make things, the more instant you'll see those returns, right? The more reciprocal things. But the less we do because of fear and all these different things, the decisions we make in this world makes it harder for us to have faster returns and stuff, because it gets lost in the sauce of all the separation and everything that we're under, because we've given in here or there, or our family has, or this or that. We've been set into a position now where we're very separated, and so it's harder to get those instant give backs, kind of like the Amish have, because they stayed a tight-knit community and stuff, so they help each other on a daily basis. They get it back immediately. They're all helping each other get there faster. So I think that's something obviously that is an important aspect to take into consideration. And if we want a better world, we have to start doing and working like people that are doing aspects that we see as helpful, right? Living in a system where you're separated and you're just about yourself and all this stuff, it obviously hasn't done a whole lot of good for us. Like we've gotten entertainment and shit like that, but that entertainment usually has kept us away from experiencing the world in real life. There's a lot of negatives to that supposed, better life that this, system promised, right? So
Right.
I know we all know that, and I don't want to rant too long.
Space changes, time changes, but yeah, also you got these year cycles, 3,200 year cycles, 2,600, 26,000 year cycles, and I mean the full system all the way down, turtles all the way down.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Uh, okay, so I think all this, I had this written up, some of it's copy and paste or whatever. I just wanted to put together kind of a breakdown, but I think I've already said it, a lot of this verbally, but we can go back in if it was needed on another show and go into more of the details. But yeah, this is stuff I already kind of stated.
Right.
I have videos here of I suggest this astrologer. I don't know if anybody knows who this is. His name is Vic Takara. But he breaks it down. See how he's showing that the moon and the sun, he breaks down exactly what I explained about how it's a clock. As you go around, it will split it up into 12 pieces. For every cycle the moon makes, the sun hand, the hour hand, moves over. That's why our clock is split into 12s, right? The sun hand will move over one, right? And sorry, I meant this is the moon, this is the sun. The small hand is the hour hand, and the big hand is the minute hand. And that's why minutes are minutes, because it's moonits, right? And hour is Horus, which is the sun, right? That's where they get all this lingo from and everything. So uh, that's its own video in itself, but we can dive into it on another time. So I have a few videos. This you know what this is, right?
Yeah, it's
What's
Vosh or Vouch or
Vsauce,
something.
Vsauce or something?
Vsauce, that's what it is. I don't know why I
Yeah,
thought
so
that was
he
translated.
explains what's going on with the sun in this video, and yeah, we can do that some other time too, where the sun, as it gets closer to the winter solstice, it's the longest complete day and night, because it actually takes longer for the Earth, because it's so close to the sun, it's already at a distance where it has to turn more to face the sun again, and that's what we're marking from when it faces the sun to when it faces the sun again. And so it takes a longer distance because it has to spin more to face it. And anyway, it's not just getting into like deeper astronomy aspects of why time has been calculated and done the way that it has, and why we have the leap year and all that. It goes into all the details. So, but I'll say that for another time. So this is, I don't know if you know what this is. Do you know what sign this is?
Is that the Ophiuchus or no?
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
okay.
Ophiuchus. So
Yeah.
the reason I show this is because, for one, they have the snakes here, right?
Yeah.
And
That's what
for,
kind of gave it away because I had forgotten the youth part, but
yeah, so he has a snake going through his leg. So this is kind of like an upside down thing of the constellation in a way, right? An
mhm.
artistic rendition. And then
Yeah.
this is a snake, and a snake is also like a river, and a snake is also like a wormhole, right? And so I'm arguing that this is showing kind of like Einstein's.
So, have you
Uh,
seen the other one, the other version of the Ophiuchus, where it's like kind of an X? It's
uh,
like an
uh,
arrow. But I wonder about this too because where's the other side of it going? It doesn't really make sense. Maybe you're right. It kind of almost has to be infinite
y-
directioned.
yeah. So I'll show some other pictures and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
Ophiuchus, through his legs in the constellation, there's a snake, and it's this long snake that he's holding. He's the snake bearer, right? And so
Right.
this goes into the story, like I was saying, with Vishnu and he sitting on a snake and he's at the center of the galaxy and the lotus comes out and we're basically, if Brahma is sitting on the lotus and he's creating us, he created this world and all of us that are in it, including all the gods before it comes down to being humans. Uh, we're in that plane that Brahma's in, and so the attachment back to the galactic plane, there is some sort of cord, right? There's some sort of connection, there's some sort of river, there's some sort of wormhole back to the galactic plane. And when we get into an alignment, there seems to be an opening of a gate, the golden gate. And this is where the gods can come through. The golden gate is the gate of the gods, where the gods can come through in the Egyptian belief system, right? So I'm showing that I believe that that's why the symbology is embedded into Ophiuchus, is showing that it's that snake that's leading, that is the stem of the lotus flower or whatever, right? And this is almost like a flower can be considered, or just the bending of space-time to for
But also the
creation.
rose is the word rose comes from the Hebrew rosh, which is for skull, and so
Yeah.
skull and blossoming, kind of this idea of the same time, like life blossoming and like life happening. And
Yes,
it's
and death is
interesting the idea of
necessary.
it's in this sort of omega of pillars, right? Like this infinite curve. You know,
Yes.
I can see this being a practical syn- uh, unification of the 12 and 0.
Yes. Yeah, and you got the figure eight, right? Why was six afraid of seven? Because seven, eight, nine, right? Like seven
Right.
took nine and turned it into an eight, basically, right? It got rid of nine, so you don't have like a, six is like a spiral down in a way, and it's associated with sex and it causes rebirth and stuff like that. Nine is the way out, and so seven is associated with like Saturn and the sickle and stuff like that. And Saturn is not allowing us to have a way out, only a way back down and then come back again. You can only rebirth. You can go into the underworld and come back again. Until we fix things, there's no way out. So we're stuck in this loop. We're stuck in this infinite loop, right? And so that's why they even have the infinite loop here. And yes, the flower is the blossoming, the new birth. You have to keep giving birth. That's how you really stay alive forever until you figure it out, right? You have to die, and there's a skull associated. So death and birth is necessary to even have existence, because you get bored and you'd learn everything, and it wouldn't be a challenge and there wouldn't be purpose to even existence. It's like, oh yeah, let's start life, and oh, we figured it all out. Okay, time to end it. You know, everything has to go through a long period of time for there to be something, for existence to even exist. So, it's a challenge. Like everything we do, we like to play video games, we like to figure out puzzles, we like to win at things and all that stuff. We like the challenge. We like that's experience, that's life, that's the reason behind it. So when people get lost and like, oh, this world's a trap and all this stuff, and it's all they're just focusing on the bad parts, and they're really just like kind of, they'll go and commit suicide or something else. It's like you didn't go anywhere. I guarantee it. You're gonna come back, you know. And if you didn't take the opportunity here while you were alive to make this place a better place, you're probably going to come back to something that's worse every time, because it's getting worse before it gets fixed. So I think we need to put in more effort into fixing the place so that when we do come back, we're not putting ourselves in deeper down the hole or into a prison, because the dominate half of this world will do that. So yeah, here's Ophiuchus and see the snake through his legs, right? And then this is like your U, if you didn't connect it right here, this like bell shape or whatever. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, sorry, I was muted.
Oh yeah. Oh, sorry. Um, so yeah, so Ophiuchus is a large constellation straddling the celestial equator. Its name comes from the ancient Greek meaning serpent bearer. I think a lot of people already know that. And it's a man grasping a snake. Some of the stuff I put in for like, I can even show my kids or whatever, to kind of
Yeah, yeah.
give them a deeper understanding. But yeah, this is kind of just like a view in the galactic center, right? But obviously we would be closer. We'd be inside here somewhere. Depending, I don't know if the arms go around, but this is an artistic graphic
I
rendition
can't
out of
even
it.
see the rest of the turtle. I mean, what? Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so here's the Einstein-Rosen bridge wormhole. So you see how it does the same thing? See how he shows it folding and then the wormhole goes through,
I can't
right?
believe this is where our tax dollars go. They're building the Einstein-Rosen bridge. No, I'm just kidding. Also,
Yeah.
but yeah, this
Well,
is
yeah, I think that somehow they think that it's associated, and that's why they embedded that symbology.
I mean, you got to look at it and you got to see the Ophiuchus symbol. You can't
Yeah,
avoid it. It's right
yeah,
there.
yeah. It's a wormhole, classically,
It's the
the
arrow
ancients
going
believed
through
worms
the
and snakes were the same thing, So
the arrow, the serpent going through, yeah, worm going through the U. That's pretty
yes,
crazy.
yeah,
I'd never associated with Ophiuchus before. That's interesting.
yeah. So I think that's the gate of the gods, like I was saying. It is, right?
Right.
It's the Egyptians believe it, and so I think what this rainbow or this, galactic plane, the Milky Way, it has all the characters in the constellation of all the underworld. God, it has Hercules and all of them, right? They're all associated with going into the underworld and trying to free a goddess or a god out of it, and all the stories. So I think that they think at least that this time period that they're saying when it clicks into place is going to afford this opening of this gate and open up a wormhole of some sort, and the gods can come through it, right? So this is that was a video I made on it. Just I play some. I used to try to make a bunch of videos that showed that music was actually symbolically embedded with the same information, and I try to line up
Totally.
pictures and stuff like that. I don't know if you want me playing any of that stuff, so I'm just gonna avoid that. But here is Nut and Geb, right, brother and sister, right? And so look at what Geb's doing. He's reaching through. She's the Milky Way. He's reaching through the Milky Way, right? And over here, his foot, Ophiuchus, is reaching through the Milky Way on this side. And look where they're coming from. These are the gods, right? This is Horus, right? Coming from this side, the galactic plane, through the Milky Way, through this rainbow, right? To manifest, basically, right? Just
Absolutely.
interesting, right?
Right.
He's reaching through and his foot's reaching through. So I believe
And
that
there's
that's,
that wave too. Like
yeah,
the things being pulled by the wave, right?
yeah, exactly. And this is the boat. So when you get into the stories, the Egyptian stories and everything like that, it's all about this boat going into the underworld and coming back out and all that stuff associated with the sun. But I can show even more details that there's two discs, right? So there's one here and there's one here, the one on his head and everything. That one is the galactic disk, the sun at the middle of the galaxy, and the other one is the Earth's sun. And that is the portal is between those two suns, right? Because one is the child of the ultimate sun, right? So our sun is the Jesus sun. The galactic sun is the next step up, God. And obviously there's probably even bigger and bigger gods in that understanding, but you know, just trying to show that they actually think that there's, I believe that they think that there's two discs when they represent it, and I'll show that here soon too. Um, so yeah, here I just go back and say, look, here's Orion's arm, and then Ophiuchus's leg, right? Why did they want to make this character out of these stars and everything, and then he's reaching through, um, and then so this is a video. I think it's the video. Yeah, it's the video on the nakshatra that's associated with Orion, right? And it goes into details, which are very interesting. But I'm not going to play any of these videos because I don't know if you get like demonetized or whatever if I play
Sometimes
these.
they can be kind of rude about it. I might be able to do something if I'm like looking at it like this or something. But yeah, sound probably anyway. We can just
Okay. Yeah, I would just suggest that people go and check out Vic. He's got all these on his channel. He goes through all the nakshatras, all the details, very
based.
well educated, and he really gets into like good stuff that's really interesting. I can't remember exactly what it is that I wanted to point out, but obviously this is associated with Beetlejuice and all that stuff. Betelgeuse, however you want to
We
say
might
it. Right?
almost be big enough to start doing reaction videos. I think there's like a size where like as long as they're into it, like they don't want I don't want to like ever take somebody else's views away from them and have them only watch like my reaction of their video. That's a thing I think I've seen a lot where somebody big does a reaction, everyone only watch like I only watch Asmongold's reactions to things, and I feel bad because I'm missing out on the original content. But so yeah, we'll see, because I want to promote this guy. It's great.
Yeah, and I think that, it's an educational reaction. Like when we're reacting to it, we're going to be going into the details of like, there's something very
Totally.
specific that we want to point out about what it is he's explaining about these things.
Yeah.
And people would be interested in him and want to go see all of his information anyways, because he's just, very educated and has a lot to offer. But yeah, we'll just have people go check this out if you're interested. You will find, I feel, if you're interested, a lot of details about this nakshatra that's associated with Orion to be giving you more information on what it is that I'm pointing out. So, yeah, and then I show a Fuca side, and I think there's probably a video about that. Show some other pictures of this. See how the tail goes into the galactic plane, into the Milky Way, and then head comes out this way. Right? They're trying the best they can with a two-dimensional pictograph to show direction and stuff like that, right? And that's why it switches to direction stuff. You'll see a lot with different people that are doing these. We can get into that. I've looked at it like, oh, I see why they did it. I see why they changed the direction in this case. They want it to face a certain way, right? They even do it in earlier stuff that I was showing. The way that they point the zodiacs, they're even showing, they're all looking towards the galactic plane. They're doing that on purpose, I feel. Here's the Golden Gate. I don't know if this is a video. I think it is a video. But this is the Golden Gate in Jerusalem, right? And here's the Temple Mount, right? So it's to get to the Temple Mount. This is where Jesus came through a couple times, and he's supposed to, when he comes back again, he's supposed to go through the Golden Gate. At least that's how the story is, and I think that's why the Rosicrucians and Masons and all that associated it with San Francisco's Golden Gate. That they found geomancy that pointed them that direction, that it was actually the Golden Gate here on the West Coast, because it's the final place, and the West is what a lot of cultures point out, that you have to go west to find this place.
You're crazy. What a wild idea. No.
Yeah. And that's why Silicon Valley was created here, because it's actually the technology is supposed to open that gate, I believe. That it's all associated. They all know this. They all were working on it specifically.
Do you ever just drive? I remember as a kid, I would drive through like San Jose, and you look at everything, and there are like all these buildings going up that are all these Masonic temples and these like weird, not even like Babylonian temples, just sort of Egyptian architecture. And you go to a Fry's electronics store, and it's literally got mummies in it, and you're going this escalator. Do you remember the Fry's in the old days?
Yeah, exactly.
It was a giant. It was literally a temple. It was just a temple. It was straight up.
Yeah.
I mean, so the idea was very built into it. Like as a little kid, like if I'm going to go buy a mouse for my computer or a printer or something like that, I'm going to go to the temple. I'm going to go to this Egyptian temple, the Fry's Electronics, and it's going to have this electric escalator that's going to bring me inside. And there's going to be gods with golden pharaoh heads and everything, and Macintosh and stereos. It's crazy.
Yeah. And it was right down, down 17 from the Rosicrucian temple, right? It was only about 2 minutes away. I grew up right in that area, both in Campbell next to the Fry's, literally like 3 blocks.
I mean, if you
down,
want to
and then
build a
3 blocks
building,
down from the Rosicrucian.
imagine like just generally, like any of the rules to build a building on the side of the highway, you have to build them a certain way. There's this huge factory building made of stone, like cinder blocks and concrete, and they end up even if that company is only there for 30 minutes, right? You have a corporation, a tech company during the boom, and they have all these rules put on them that they have to build this building a certain way. Then they leave, and now you just have San Jose just filled with these Sumerian temples That is
Yeah.
the aesthetic. It doesn't look like Gothic. It doesn't look like, stucco mansions in the terracotta. It looks like Sumerian temples, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that's, even the way they name the streets, all kinds of stuff. When you look at it, I mean, the way they laid out the streets of like Bascom and what that means, like Bascom and the Meridian, right? Meridian goes all the way up, and then it comes up to a point, and it goes right into the Rosicrucian temple there. It's a big obelisk on the
Yeah.
street, and obviously they do that throughout,
Like we're gonna be like Rome, but
Washington,
like that
everything.
should say something that they're saying that they want to make San Jose like Rome. Like that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, yeah, and then it's the river system that goes up and uh if you look at what San Jose looks like, it looks like a cup or a chalice, and then it goes down
Hmm.
to like a stem, and the river system goes all the way down. And it's very similar to, and the way that the river runs and everything, it's very similar to Egypt because it
Right.
goes from south to north, right? And then opens up and then into the
Yeah.
um
This has been coming up a lot. Just that it's the same agriculture, the same potential for agriculture, same plants grow there, everything. It's the
yeah,
Fertile Crescent. It's the next Fertile Crescent, right? It's the other
yeah,
Fertile Crescent.
land of heart's delight, right? And it
Yeah.
looks like a flower the way that it comes up. So the river goes up and then it spreads out and gets into the bay and everything like that. So yeah, it's very similar, and they know that they're looking for
Yeah.
geomantic signs, the geographical indications of the symbology, and that shows them the way, how to find
Yeah.
it. I mean, they believe that Mother Nature is talking to them at all times, right? That's where we get our ideas, our art, all that stuff comes in these thoughts that are coming from the underworld. They're coming from our imagination or the sleep world, or, you know, uh, the place that's not, in physical existence, right? And they associate that underworld obviously with this feminine deity, and so it comes
Mm.
from the mother goddess and stuff like that, all to do with fertility, right? And this rebirth and all this stuff. So yeah, but there's a lot of it embedded into Silicon Valley, into the Bay Area, and obviously throughout the world they've been looking for this, and they put their stamp on it. They're like, okay, we found it here, we found it here, we found it here, but we're looking for a very specific one, right? So a lot of this stuff is you know very similar when you go to other places that they've done it and everything. They found a lot of the same sort of dynamics, right? So the in Washington D.C., you see it's like a mirror image on the opposite coast, but it's bigger actually, the way that the bay is and everything, and then their river system comes in and it's bigger and it splits and it does this Y, and the Y is connected to Jesus, or the child, the son, right? The woman eventually making the man out of the woman, right? And turning the X into a Y. That's how you get the male gene and stuff like that. So yeah, it's all symbolic. They follow all this stuff and they embed it in there. They just don't tell, they don't want everybody knowing, because they all come from these secret societies that we're supposed to promise to pass on this information to people that we're not going to, you know, tell the details of what it all is, because it wasn't meant, it's only meant for a certain time to be understood, or you end up losing it to the dominators, right? So, some of it I feel is supposed to be revealed in these times, and so it's more open to talking about, but not classically. They had to keep it hidden or it would have been snuffed out, I believe. Um, so on this one, we're going into the Golden Gate, or the Gate of Mercy. Uh, yeah, it's the eastern gate of the Temple Mount, but when you look through it, you're looking to the west, right? Um, just give some background information. There was a video, but I can't play it. Um, they go into a little bit of the details and the history of the Golden Gate, but we'll get into that on another time. Yeah, this gets into more of the Golden Gate stuff in Jerusalem. Uh, Yeah. Oh, so there's the Sushan Gate was known to be used for the masses to enter the Temple Mount, but reserved only for the high priest and all those that aided him when taking out the red heifer of the scapegoat on Yom Kippur. Um, Without going
So
through this and
the
taking too much
gate
time.
is the mouth of God in a lot of ways. And so the idea that God produces life and eats life, this is something that's been coming up recently a lot.
Yeah.
And the idea of the Azazel scapegoat ritual, that there is a gamble and lots are tossed, and Bar Abbas, right, is the son of God. That's what Bar Abbas means. And then also that this idea of the Yeshua being the other goat. This is one ritual, the other is the red heifer. And of course, that's become famous because they're cloning cows in order to have unblemished red heifers ready for
Yeah.
sacrifice. And that's kind of a nice modernity.
Yeah. So right here, the red heifer, see it? I
Taurus,
believe, you know, it's associated, probably, right? They're
because it just keeps on going, you know, it keeps on trucking.
yeah, yeah, yeah. They have it all embedded, so I'm sure they know more of the details of it, beyond its symbolism and everything, exactly why it is that they want that. And they could probably cheat it too, and they're just trying to line it up with, they're the ones that are pushing for progress, and so I feel they're the ones behind trying to create these wars and trying to bring about the end times so they can get this character to show up. Like they really want this character to show up. They really want this to all come to fruition. And you can even go back into the apostles of Jesus, always asking them, when is it going to be? When is heaven on earth going to be? And all this stuff. And he just says, look, it'll happen in the millennial generation, he says, right? Which we have entered into the millennial generation when this alignment started lining up, right? And we're more getting towards the center of the galactic plane. And millennials are still here. We're not all dead yet. But he he would he would tell them like, look, it can happen now if you wanted it. Like it's in front of your face, but you have to build it. You have to work together, right? And the fact that you're going to sit here and let me die is you're not there. If you're going to let me die, you guys think I'm important and you're going to let me die, then you're not there. How are you going to ask for heaven on earth if you can't, make it? You have to be able to keep it, right? If it was given to you, or why would it even be given to you, right? Like throw in pearls to swine and stuff like that. Like you guys can't keep it, so it's not going to happen. But, it could, right? And that's basically what he was trying to say is like, look, it'll happen down the line as we get more sophisticated and stuff like that. When people are willing to really stand up for each other and do what's right no matter what, then you can have it. But until then, well, how are you going to be able to keep it? You know what I mean? You have to keep the gift, or why give it away? You can't. So he was just a warning. He was just a reaper for that time period, right? He was coming down and he was interfacing. He was a mercurial, the gate of mercy, right? Mercy and Mercury and all that stuff is all related. He was a mercurial character that was communicating with humanity for God, right? Trying to tell them, like, look, you got to get your shit together. You guys are letting all this stuff happen. That's why he was angry with the Sadducees and Pharisees and all that stuff. Is like you guys are getting dominated by this group that are just, forcing you guys to turn against each other and working you guys off on each other and stealing from you. And you guys are letting people just get murdered and all this shit because you're not standing up for each other. So I don't know if I've ever told you this, but the thing that is associated with Jesus where he's on the cross and he says, Father, why have you forsaken me?
Why?
That's a
Oh, I
that's a
mean, I
psalm.
do know. I do. Right.
That's
Sorry,
a
it's a
song.
psalm.
So yeah, and that psalm is a song specifically about
Psalm 23, right? I think it is. Is
yeah,
that right?
and the reason that they sing that psalm, and it was a very well-known psalm back then, right? Was they were crying about why have they been forsaken by God, all these
22.
this misery and all this stuff happened. He was doing it as like he was putting it in their face. He was like, "Oh, why have you forsaken me? But I'm
Y-
up here getting tortured to death, and you guys are watching it. You're letting it
Right.
happen." So
And there's a whole
he
bit
wasn't
there where they're
asking.
like tossing lots and everything. There's a whole thing where they're pouring out. It's very much exactly what's happening to him. So at very least, he's like,
Yeah.
"Wow, this is ironic. You know, this is poetic justice. I mean, check it
Yeah.
out. You're doing the thing. You're doing the thing from this song."
Yes, exactly. Why have you forsaken me? Why is God
Praise Jesus.
forsaking us? Because this, you're allowing this right here to happen.
Runs
You're
up there
allowing your
spitting
brothers.
bars. MC
Yeah.
Jesus spitting bars.
And
Yeah.
see, Jesus was spitting bars for them. And then they try to, obviously, I think that, the evil that is the same ones that are trying to build these empires and all that stuff, they got a hold of the information and they try to twist it and give it to
Right.
us in a different form and say, oh, yeah, he was not sure of himself when he was dying. It's like,
Right.
no, that
Yeah.
guy,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. Why
I
would he
knew
even
that
sit
was
there and get
rubbish.
beaten to death? You know what I mean? Why would he just beg for his own death? He wasn't worried about God forsaking them. He was
Tabernacle.
telling them they were the reason they were forsaken. And he was always angry at his apostles all the time. They were always asking him questions that he thought were stupid, and he had to try to explain it to them in parables.
Yeah.
It was like,
It's
look,
also relevant that at the end of this one, because you got to understand, like, so he's talking about how scared he is. He's going to get arrested, basically. And, like, what are they going to do to me? Because, like, obviously, a lot of bad things are happening all around me. And I'm just a lonely goat herder. You know what I mean? I'm not going to do super well in this if I don't have your help. And it ends with, after describing essentially like this vision of Ishmael being crucified, more or less, that you're there for me, you're always there for everyone, you'll be there for me in the end, and everything that happens is in your favor, and this is the way things are supposed to go. So it's definitely not that Christ is saying, or Yeshua is saying, oh man, like, dude, why are you forsaking me, bro? That's a total misreading, 100%.
yeah, because he already knew, you know what I mean? He knew what he was
Yeah.
facing.
Well,
He knew
even
what he
like,
was
and
going up
again, like,
against.
even like, I mean, like, let's just do like a atheistic Yale historicity for a second. Even if it's just some dude, the facts are the facts, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's exactly a psalm that he's quoting while
Yeah.
he's being tortured to death,
Yeah.
And so, regardless of anything else, there's no question that this dude is that hard. He's so hard. He's the most
Yeah.
hardcore dude possible.
Yeah, if he was so magical and all this stuff, right? He was doing all this magic, right? Why
Yeah.
wasn't everybody convinced that it's like we got to protect this dude? And why couldn't he just get out of it? Just do a magic trick and get out of any kind of trap that they were setting for him? Like he
Yeah.
knew what he was doing, he knew where he was going, right?
Yeah.
I'm not even arguing that he really existed. That's not the point. The story.
Well, it's an intimation also of a character that's even more interesting than Krishna, because in Krishna could go through any of these circumstances and not feel the suffering, kind of to your point. So this is a version of the boat, the body of the spirit, that is saying, I'm gonna endure all the things the most hardcore way possible and endure them all the way through without any sort of magical way to escape that processing of that thing, to show it's possible, really. Which is like very similar to what like a Twitch gamer is doing when they play a video game. They're showing like how to play a game. This is someone showing you how to play life, right?
Yeah.
This is kind of the vibe that you get from that. And it's like, and I think, like, in terms of Christ-like behavior, if you're ever being crucified, you should sing a psalm. That's probably like the thing to do, right?
Yeah.
Because like, what do you got? What are you gonna take from me next? I don't know.
And if you want to get through the gate of eternal life, right? If you want the utopia, if you want heaven on earth, that's the type of sacrifice everybody should be willing to do. As long as we're all willing to do it, we don't even have to, right? As long as we're all working together, and we're all willing to sacrifice.
The universe is like, we
moment.
got that figured out. Yeah.
Yeah, then there it is. Then you got the eternal life, because obviously Vishnu won't wake up if it's a sweet dream, right? But if it becomes a nightmare, and that's where we're headed, eventually Vishnu is not going to like the nightmare anymore, and you wake up, right, out of your nightmares. But if it's a sweet dream, you want to sleep in, right? So you got to make it a sweet dream for God to want to sleep in, for us to want to continue this life eternally, right? And we can make this place, it's always a possibility. Like, that is an absolute possibility. I don't know, if you can't imagine that, then there's something wrong with your imagination, that you can't get this place to be perfect. It's possible. And perfect doesn't mean that it's just going to be you don't eat, you don't shit, you don't have sex because you don't reproduce or whatever. It's whatever that balance point is, right? It's where we can have great experiences and
Maximize potential.
at the maximized ease, right? Yeah. So it's not maybe the utopia that everybody may idealize perfect, like, oh, I just never have to do anything. It's because that's not really living life, right? You're always going to have some ups and downs and everything, but you try to get it to as close to like, you know, less ups and downs as you can, as close to that straight line, and just try to extend your life a little bit. Doesn't need, you don't need to live forever. And then once you're ready, then you have your children, because then you're getting ready for your sunset. You're getting ready to leave this world because you've had enough of experiences and stuff, and you're gonna let another thing that has its memory erased from its past experiences here come back again and then try it. You know, so you got to be a little bit more forgiving with the way that you really implement this thought of what a utopia or heaven on earth is, and not just think that it's, you know, you don't need to have sex because you're just going to live forever, and you won't need to eat, and you know you're never going to be mad, right? There's going to be ups and
Right.
downs. You're going to have
You have to,
feelings.
it's actually just like increased responsibility, but like because
Yeah,
you're capable of handling it. So it's like getting a driver's license,
yeah,
but for creation.
exactly. And we can make it, we can implement things that are long lasting and all this stuff, right? So that, you know, we can use the technology to do a lot of the work that we are continually putting ourselves through, and making, you know, people suffer through and stuff like that, because we're, you know, oh, you got to work so you can make money. You know, it's just a cycle thing, because that just creates a vacuum for these elites, or whatever you want to call them, that I consider them to be the dominators. They get to just siphon off the energy of that. So they're just getting us hustling and just repeating patterns and stuff to suck off of us. We got to get out of that. That's one of the main things, is you got to stop them from keeping us in you know, rat race, or just, you know, running on this wheel. You know, you get out of that and you really structure things correctly, and you make them long lasting, right? Like we have light bulbs that can last forever, but we don't, because it's not profitable. We need to quit thinking in those terms and trying to profit and stuff. That's really just causing us to have security issues and all these other things that come along with it. Very wasteful. We're toxifying our planet. We're toxifying each other. We treat each other like shit. We have no connection. We can't rely on each other. There's so much losses by doing it the way that we do. It's not a good argument to live in the way that we're living. So yeah, we need to have some mercy for each other and some repentance, right? And that includes just fortifying everything that we do, making it stronger, make it last longer, helping each other more, taking aspects of the Amish and this group and that group, all the good things, pull it all into one, and you're going to get what I consider a utopia. You're going to get heaven on earth. You're going to get what was meant to be, where God through us can have the best and longest experiences, instead of it all just being clustered in these top elites that are just siphoning all that, and then they're just repeating the same experiences in these very lavish ways, and it's all for waste. It's not really getting anywhere. I mean, God needed, I think everything's meant to be, and God wanted to have all the experiences that it has on the low end and the high end, but you know, eventually, you know, us and God and this world and nature wants to start navigating towards the middle and finding more long lasting, better experiences, and not, you know, throwing it away on the polar opposites. I think
Right.
we're coming to that time, right? We're getting closer to that gate, but it's a narrow gate, like they say, right? It's like what is it? What do they say? It's like putting a piece of straw through your eye or something like that. Do you know that saying?
I mean,
Sorry, I'm
like
not.
camels through the eye of a needle, maybe.
Yeah, yeah, right. Like it's a
Okay.
narrow gate to get through, right? So you're gonna have to not be so polar with the way that you see things or do things, or you know. Here's a time lapse video of the Milky Way over the Golden Gate Bridge. This guy took a time lapse video of it and stitched it together. I don't know enough about photography to know exactly how he did it, but you can see that this is the Golden Gate straight right through here, and it's basically a
You know,
line.
there's a little thing there also with the camel in the eye of the needle because it's like the gimel through the yod, right?
Yeah,
So it's actually kind of it's almost like a Kabbalah pun.
yeah. So what's the pun?
Well, because the camel is really gimel, so it's like the third letter of the alphabet, which so it's a three, and then
Yeah, it looks
so
like
the
a
eye of
fiery
the
kind of thing, right? It looks like fire a
yeah,
little bit.
but
Yeah,
it looks like fire, yeah, but also it's supposed to kind of represent a camel for some people. Like David would say, it has to do with the camel. Depends on who you talk to about it, but gimel and camel, and the word camel comes from gimel, and
yeah,
the eye of the needle is the yod, and so you could think of yod as sort of like the Ein Sof, and also the the well, yeah, like the fullness of like the complete tetragrammaton, but also the Ein Sof, right? Like the Yod He Vav, it's like the Yod of the Yod He Vav, so it's the eye of the needle. So putting the
yeah.
three through the eye, the three, how do you fit three through the eye of the needle is kind of a
Yeah, so I guess that could be symbolic. I mean, we can go into all the different symbology because there's always layers, right? 33 degrees or 99
don't call
degrees
me
of
out
looking
like
at
that,
it and all
Brett.
that stuff, right? So like it's the past, present, and future, right? How do you reconcile the past, the present, and the future without repeating patterns, right? Or getting locked into you know, a prison, with the wrong future or whatever. So it's probably that's an aspect, a way of looking at it, probably, right? Just offhand, is that you gotta make it right. Like you gotta take some of the things in the past that we were doing correctly, like more relying on each other and community and stuff like that, and take a little bit of what the future, which is the technology and stuff like that, and bring those good aspects of both sides into the present to make that
Right.
heaven on earth, right?
It is crazy though, looking at the Golden Gate Bridge with Nuit over her or over the Golden Gate Bridge, right? This is very
Yeah.
reminiscent of
Yeah,
the
it looks like
Egyptian
her
element.
head right here, and then her boobs, right? And then
I
her,
can
her
totally see
legs go
why
down.
the Rosicrucians would have been like, yeah, here.
Yeah. Yeah. Very interesting, right? And then I guess this side of it, even though it looks like the galactic center, is actually the dark rift, right? So this is Xibalba. And you know, it's I mean, we can get into those details too about, Xibalba and Shambhala
Shambhala.
and the underworld and all that stuff because I'm still kind of
Right.
working that out. Like, okay, so this would be um, like a holding, kind of like a Betelgeuse, like that waiting room kind of thing.
Yeah. So
So there's something about, yeah,
the three
yeah,
rooms of the temple. Yeah.
yeah,
And there's a waiting room.
yeah, yeah. So there's more to be figured out with that. And I'm sure, sometimes I like put things together in my head. I'm like, oh, I get it. I get what they're trying to say. And I lose it because I don't, focus on it very long and move on to new things. Yeah, so I was just pointing out that this picture was taken January 4th. The Golden Gate Bridge was finished on January 5th. There's another picture of it going straight across. I think he just like did a fisheye view or something like that with that bent one. So he was just explaining why he had the idea and how he took the picture and all that stuff. Uh, so this goes into like the Book of the Gates. I don't know how much longer we have. I just want to kind of like probably pass through some of this stuff and we can dive into it some other time. But
It's up to you. If you want, we can go a little bit longer. But if you want to like do a second part, it's up to you. However you feel. If you
yeah,
want to
what
go for a
time
bit
what
more.
time are we at right now?
It's like
So we
10,
have kind of
12. Two and
10,
a half
12.
hours deep.
All right. We'll just let me see if there's anything else that's uh kind of worth focusing. This is just talking about how the Egyptian calendar went from 360 to 365, these 5 special days. Let's see. I'm just going to kind of go through the stuff fast and we can go back some other time. Yeah, so this has to do with Kepra and
Mm-hmm.
him holding the sun. And then I'll show some different ones here where See, he seems to be reaching for this thing. I'm arguing that this is the galactic center that he's reaching for, and then this is like Earth down here. Um, so here, so he has two. There's depictions of him holding two. So that's like our sun, and then this is the galactic sun. I think that's what it's showing. But, I'm still diving into that more to explain that and show that that's probably most likely what's really going on with this disc thing. Um, I think this one, it's kind of like a sunrise. Oh, and then the crocodiles are on this one. Yeah, I don't really have this all put together. There's a lot of adding on, but yeah, the oldest symbol for Cancer is not the crab, it's the scarab. So this Kepra character is a scarab, and it's Cancer, which is a beetle associated with Beetlejuice again, right? And so it shows again the clicking in of Cancer with Betelgeuse, or that area that's important. Yeah, this goes into more details about Kepra. And so here, so this is, see how it has a star in it? And then I go into that, and then this is our sun. He's holding with like his back legs, and he's reaching out. So it has to do with this Kepler character, is this reincarnation character that I believe they're depicting, that it's this wormhole connecting the two suns to each other. And this goes in. So this is the Duat. So like we said, the Duat is the underworld, or the Milky Way, right? So this is a depiction of the Duat, right? So there, he's reaching for the Duat. And so it's an underworld god, right? Duat is pronounced Duat, appears in Tuat, or whatever. Amente, right? So in Thoth stuff, he talks about traveling into Amente and figuring out how to get out and all that stuff. And I know people associate that also with the word that has to do with your mental, right? It's in your mind or whatever, which is, probably arguably we're in Vishnu's dream, so it's Vishnu's Amente, Vishnu's mind, or God's mind. It's the underworld, blah, 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 blah. And then this is information on this lotus flower, how it has to do with the primordial waters. And I went into that, how it's connected to Brahma. And then this is Vishnu, obviously, on the snake. And then out of his belly button is the lotus flower, and that's Brahma. And he has four heads for all four directions. You just can't see the fourth one. It's facing the other way. And that's the depiction with the fourth head. And then he's sitting on this bird that is like a Thoth bird, right? Or riverbank bird that eats the worms and all that stuff, and that basically memory and all that stuff is washed up on the banks. All dead matter gets washed to the rivers wash to the ocean, and it associates with the rivers, the water and ocean, keeping memory and storing memory and recycling that memory back to the sun, because the sun strips the memory off of the ocean, brings it up into the clouds, and brings the water back over, and that cycle just, hydrologic system just keeps continuing like that. So yeah, this gets into a lot with Brahma. Yeah, I guess it's probably better that we do a second one instead of going too long tonight.
I think that's a good idea. I think this is
there's
also
a lot of
really, I'm really
information.
interested in this stuff though. So yeah, you want to do something in a few days? We could probably set something up and do the second part.
Yep, sounds good. Yeah, because there's a lot to go in here, and I should probably go through and maybe organize it a little bit better and stuff like that, so we can get a little more detailed on some of these factors. But yeah,
that's a good lead up to where we're gonna go. I'm good with that. That's good.
Yep. Fair enough. Yeah, and I just want the audience to give us some feedback and any questions or things they want to help out with, or stuff they already know, insights that connect into it. I want to work with everybody and kind of see what it is that we can dig into deeper and find out about what all this means. There's still a lot more to be presented and all that stuff, but
yeah.
Yeah.
I like the planetarium. I always thought it was interesting that the Rosicrucians had it closed for so long during an alignment that was happening. I think it was like 2008 to 2014 or something like that, or longer, 2016. It was closed. I mean, it was like something like
Yeah.
that. So it was
Yeah.
crazy that they kept it closed for so many years, and they said it was because they have to work on it. But it always felt like that's not what was really the issue, right? You know,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and
I
just the idea of
feel
projecting stars. Yeah,
exactly. I feel like there's been an obvious campaign to interfere with the part of technology that benefits humanity as a whole, because I think we're supposed to be going through, obviously, it's not just the elites, it's not just, whatever the
intelligence. Yeah,
dominant side that is the problem. There's a big part of humanity that's being tested and is failing to pass their test, and they, I do believe, need to have judgment on them. Everybody does, right? And so, humanity, the population of humanity also needs to go through a judgment period. And these guys are a part of that. They're reapers, a lot of them, in their own way, and they're they're getting us in particular positions to get us to show our cards, and then obviously with the technology and everything, they can sit there and say hi to Jasper.
cats know what to do. They're just like, all right, let me get in here. I'll fix it.
Yeah, he's a cool cat. They're very
Speaking
fun.
of Egyptian stars,
Yeah, you gotta have a cat around, right?
right?
The Egyptians thought so. So yeah. Anyways, we'll get into more of the details and stuff here soon. And yeah, it was great talking to you, bro. It's been a while.
Legit. Yeah, you too,
Yeah.
man. Everybody, I hope you have a good night. I'll talk to you
Have a
soon.
good night, guys. Yeah.
Thanks, Chad.